Welcome to Freethinkers Fireside, where we put the human and humanists on one cozy chat at a time. My name is Helen, also known as House Bells, and I do apologize for last night. I had a really bad nerve pain flare up, so I had to cancel my show with John the Skeptic, but he'll be back on July 10th. I think I scheduled him for. So another month, but he'll be here. Anyway, tonight I want to say hello to Glenn, the cross examiner. So we're going to say hi to Glenn. Hi, Glenn.
Hey, it's Graham, actually. Graham, the cross examiner.
Why am I saying Glenn then?
There's another Glenn somewhere in the ACA, I think. So you probably.
Oh, that's what it is. I've been tagging the wrong people. So it's the wrong tag. I've known you for 2 years, which is
Correct.
also embarrassing.
No problem.
It's fine. And I would blame, I could say I was high, but I'm not even high. I was just wrong.
No problem.
So, Graham,
I've got Graham and Martin. It's Graham Martin, and either name can be a first name, either name can be a last name. In fact, in high school, I stood in choir next to a guy named Martin Graham, and I'm Graham Martin. So it's always confusing.
See, well, now thank you for trying to make me feel better for mistaking your name. I do appreciate that. So, tell the people who you are and what do you do?
Well, I'm an atheist and I'm an attorney, and I have a podcast called the Cross Examiner Podcast, and I also am a host for ACA shows. Recently, I've been doing a lot of the Atheist Experience, but I have also done Truth Wanted and a lot of other shows, including some with Helen, which was always a blast.
Thank you. I like doing the shows with you too. If I can, I just have to remember to say your name properly. So, how long? When did you get involved? Because I got involved with the ACA back during COVID. I want to say like late 2020 because it's all Kelly's fault.
Oh, really?
But yeah, he's the one that's like, you should volunteer. And I was, because we were friends on Discord, and I was like, sure. And then henceforth, here we are.
Right.
So how did you get involved with the
ACA? That's a really good question. So I've been a fan for over a decade, watched back in the early days. And I think I started getting sort of activated when January 6th happened. That's the thing that really pricked up my ears. I'm an attorney, so I was really paying attention to sort of the insane things that had happened during the first Trump presidency with respect to disregarding the Constitution and things like that. And that's when I did a little research into the underlying causes of January 6th. It was massive amounts of misinformation. Obviously, the strong arm politics of the Trump administration, but there was a big streak of Christian nationalism buried in there. And that, for a long time, has been something I've been worried about since the days of Bush, when he started, getting pastors proselytizing to the army and all of that sort of stuff. I've always sort of been worried about that. And so I think that was the catalyst for me to say, you know what? I think I can start a podcast. And I did that. And I did it with the idea of, hey, I really like the ACA. Maybe if I start a podcast, I can also volunteer with the ACA. And sure enough, it worked out. They needed help at the time, and I was glad to participate. So I think that's sort of the origin story of how I started speaking out online.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I started with RFR, and then Kelly on my own. And then Kelly, because during the plague times, I was spending a lot of time on the ACA Discord.
Right.
And thanks, AJ, for, I was wondering if Graham had changed his name to Glenn. Or if you become infidel. Yeah, I know. I totally, I'm owning that I spelled that wrong. I was completely wrong. So I'm owning that, AJ. Thank you for the reminder. Anyway, so embarrassing. I gotta fix the thumbnail later. Like, it's gonna bother me. So anyway, that being, like, it's very, like, and then when Kelly was like, you should volunteer with the ACA as well. And I was like, sure. And I started doing behind the scenes stuff. And then I said, I kind of want to host, and they put me on the nonprofits. And I've been on a couple of the other shows, but like I now have a home at the nonprofits with like AJ, and you've been, when was the last time you were on the nonprofit?
I think it's been a year at least.
It's been a while since I've
Yeah.
seen your face
Which
behind me.
is sad because I really do like that. So I think I need to talk to some of the producers and say, hey, nonprofits is still something I
Just
dig.
DM Cynthia.
Yeah, okay. Reach out to me anytime you need a warm body.
That's right. Yeah, just say Helen told me to reach out to you. So if you don't, come back on the show. You got like that's what Helen told me to do, and then you can blame me. So I'll be like, yes, I did. I did.
Will do. Will do.
So you mentioned January 6th earlier. So let's so that brings I'm segueing into the topic tonight because it is it's a lot what is going on. So why did you want to talk about this particularly now? I don't know why, because like everything's going so well.
There's always got to be one guy that's the doom cloud, right? I think if you've watched me on my podcast or on Atheist Experience, I'm kind of a where the rubber hits the road guy, right? I can have philosophical discussions. I enjoy them. But when it comes down to it, what I'm primarily focused about is the most immediate threats to our way of life, our liberty, and things like that. And so while it's fun to sort of philosophize about, can I prove there's a God? What about the, tag argument or this argument? When I start seeing people pass laws about, for example, creating a fully publicly funded public schools that in their founding documents say that their mission is to teach the Bible as truth and to tell kids that they're going to go to hell if they aren't saved in a public school, that's where I think I want to act. We all can have our arguments about why we are atheistic, why we are theistic, but many of us agree on both sides of that fence that it's wrong for the government to tax people and give that money to a church to proselytize to children. And when you see that, and you see what's been going on for 5-10 years now of states trying to pass laws to force religion down kids' throats, and you combine that with the very well played game by Mitch McConnell and others on the GOP to stack the Supreme Court with religious conservatives, it's adding up to a sea change in constitutional law with respect to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment.
Which is a concern.
It is. It is for those of
kind of a big one.
For those of us who don't like theocracies. It's a real big concern.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm kind of at. Like, I don't, because as I say, like, people that believe in God, that doesn't really. When someone tells me they're a believer or a non-believer, that tells me absolutely nothing about you. That it's just a position you hold,
right? Right.
But if those beliefs or lack thereof cause you to make policies that affect everybody, regardless of their faith or lack thereof or position, then I'm kind of with you. I'm like, all right, like you're not just affecting like the people that belong to your very special group. You are affecting the wider populace, and I don't want to live in a theocracy. It's weird. Yeah. Even if I was a religious person, I don't like when I was a religious person, I didn't want to live in a theocracy.
Correct. Yeah. I it's one of the things I cite to people a lot. So when Texas last legislative session, not now where they're trying to do it again, but last legislative session, as
Texas, AJ just said,
Texas tried to force the 10 Commandments into the mandatory into the classroom. They tried to hire pastors as school counselors, and they tried to have a prayer time in school. One of the first people to speak out in Texas was a religious leader, was a
Mhm.
Christian pastor who had formed an organization that was, I forget the name of it, but it's basically something along the lines of Christians against church and state commingling or something like that. And here in the current case that we had just now before the Supreme Court in Oklahoma, where Oklahoma was trying to create the country's first religious public school, the Attorney General of Oklahoma, who is a lifelong Christian, conservative, white, comes from money, veteran. He owns a bank. He owns a telecom company. He owns a mansion that has its own Wikipedia page, right? That,
Damn.
like, he and I are about, and he, as Attorney General, he has like tossed out cases of police misconduct. He's tossed out some Jan 6 stuff, some fraud stuff. So he and I are about as far apart on the political spectrum as you're going to get, but he sued Oklahoma to prevent this violation of the Establishment Clause as a white conservative Christian. And all of his statements have been against Christian nationalism. So you don't have to agree on everything to agree that on the I think well-established fact that when large groups of people and countries make a country have its own religion and official religion, things like that, it doesn't go well. And history shows you
No.
that time and time again.
Yeah. And that's again like I think lately I've been more concerned about like what values you hold rather than belief.
Right.
That's like if your values are aligned with mine, like maybe we shouldn't live in a theocracy. We could have this separation of church and state. I know, shocking. And
Right.
then
Right.
something we've had since the inception of the creation of the Constitution.
Right. Right.
Yeah, we've had it for close to over 300 years. Like maybe we should just keep doing that.
Correct. In fact, we've had this concept since before the Constitution.
Mhm.
So if you'll let me do a little history lesson here,
Sure.
if you don't mind. So prior to the ratification of the Constitution, Virginia, their state, had a bill pending. And the sole purpose of the bill was to tax people to hire teachers of the Christian faith to teach Christianity in public schools in Virginia. Okay, so it was
Mhm.
exactly Oklahoma. It was, let's tax people to pay for public schools to teach Christianity as truth. You may heard of two guys named Madison and Jefferson who were from Virginia.
Mhm. Yeah, those
Madison,
guys.
yeah, Madison wrote the Bill of Rights. He wrote the First Amendment. Jefferson argued for it vociferously, right? So when this bill was introduced into Virginia, Jefferson and Madison rose up and protested loudly to the point where they wrote Madison was a remonstration and demonstrance against this bill, and they published it in all the newspapers. The General Assembly withheld a vote so these papers could be distributed across the state. And Jefferson, in his arguments, said, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly right here, but it's something along the lines of, to tax one man to pay for the teaching of another faith is tyranny, literally tyranny. Now,
Mhm.
Jefferson, you have to keep in mind, amongst conservative Christians in this country, Jefferson and Madison are like the top tier S tier founding fathers, right? They worship
Right.
these guys. Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber guy, when he was arrested, had a T-shirt on, the back of which said the Jefferson's quote about from time to time the tree of liberty must be watered by the blood of tyrants, or something like that. Some quote about the Revolutionary War. So Timothy McVeigh has this T-shirt on. He goes on TV being arrested. Within hours, the website that sells that T-shirt is sold out. It's like the most disgusting thing I can think
That's
of
so
regarding,
gross.
isn't it?
That's so
right?
That's so gross.
But that's white Christian nationalism in a nutshell,
Yeah.
right? But they worship Jefferson is the point. So Jefferson makes this point of taxing somebody to pay for the teaching of religion is tyranny, the very thing that Christian nationalists who want to hoard guns and fight against the government are worried about. And he goes on to explain, not only is it tyranny if I'm taxing a Christian to pay for the teaching of Islam, he says, even if the pastor who's going to be paid has the same faith as it's robbing me of my right to donate my own money to that particular pastor with whose life or teachings I would make the model of my life. So he's basically saying, even if you're taxing Christians to teach Christianity, even if you're taxing Protestants to teach Protestantism, there is so many differences amongst pastors that you are going to give money to those that disagree, not even in thinking about I'm taxing a Muslim to pay for a Christianity or I'm taxing a Christian to teach Judaism. So this is pre-Constitution. They rise up and they introduce a counter bill entitled, and I'm not going to get the title right, but the words religious liberty are in it. The Virginia bill to protect or to promote religious liberty. So their point here is keeping the government out of the business of favoring any given religion, teaching any religion, paying for the teaching of religion is religious liberty. So you have the core founding fathers for Christian nationalists, for the most conservative among us, shouting down the Virginia Assembly, saying this is tyranny to do this. Okay.
Right.
And they win. The Virginia Assembly doesn't do it. They pass Jefferson's bill for religious liberty. And later on, the Constitution takes effect. We've got the First Amendment, which says, in part, that the government cannot establish a religion. We flash forward to present day, not but 2 weeks ago, and the Supreme Court found 4 justices to vote against everything that Madison and Jefferson just said. 4 justices on the Supreme Court, and Amy Coney Barrett wasn't there. She had recused herself. 4 people voted that Oklahoma should be allowed to create religious public schools. We don't know which 4, because it was not a majority opinion. It was a 4-4 opinion. I'm guessing Roberts was the one who voted with the liberal wing to protect the First Amendment. But 4 others, which would be Thomas, Gorsuch, Alito, and Kavanaugh, most likely those are the 4 that voted not only against the words that are on the page of the First Amendment, but against the history I just sort of recited. That pre-Constitution, the people who wrote the words of the Constitution were explaining what it meant, and they voted to utterly ignore that on a point that they had already addressed before the Constitution was even in effect. An exact same thing. We're going to tax people to pay for teachers to teach in public school that Christianity is true. And Jefferson and Madison said it's tyranny. I don't know how you can get more hypocritical, how you can get more counterfactual, ahistorical, than to do what those 4 justices did. So that's why I'm very, very concerned, is we found 4. I don't know what Amy Coney Barrett would have been if she was on that opinion. She has been a sort of a surprise. She very well may have voted with with Roberts to support this. As a result, because she's not there and it's only a 4-4, there's no majority opinion. All that happens is you don't overturn the lower court's opinion. So every court in Oklahoma agreed this is obviously unconstitutional. The Supreme Court of Oklahoma agreed this is unconstitutional. So it goes to
we did a nonprofit story on it.
Okay. So you go to the U.S. Supreme Court, they have a 4-4 opinion. All that means is Oklahoma is not overturned, but we don't have a national opinion that applies in any other state. So for now, it is unconstitutional in Oklahoma to have a public school that teaches Christianity or any other religion. You can bet the people who are behind this, which is mostly the Heritage Foundation and others, are going to try to do this. And the Catholic Church. The Catholic churches are the people who did Oklahoma. They created the entity, the legal entity that would
That's
create the
so
church.
weird to
Yeah.
me.
So
That's so, because can
remains
I
to be
just
seen.
give a personal example? Like, I grew up Catholic,
Okay.
and I was taught evolution
Yep.
and religion, and it was 2 separate classes.
Correct.
And my parents paid for me to go to Catholic school.
Correct.
Okay? So, and then when I got a little older, I went to public school.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because my parents, they knew that I was going to go to a public high school, so they wanted me to, like, in 8th grade, they had me go to like a public junior high. But I just find it very funny now. The Catholic Church is kind of going with the evangelicals and the Christian nationalists, when they're always been the separatists. Like, like, Catholics are real Christians, and like,
Right.
I'm over here going, like, what are you doing now? What are you doing
Yeah.
now? Oh yeah, you're losing members in power. That's what we're doing.
Correct.
Like, yeah.
Correct. And additionally, the Catholic Church has a very strong history of legal scholarship. Many
Mm-hmm.
people who are on the Supreme Court now are Catholic. I applied to Catholic University Law School when I was applying to law schools. It's a good law school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's additionally concerning that they are ignoring not only all of the Constitution, not only history, not only
Mm-hmm.
morality and logic and common sense. They're ignoring all of that. They're also ignoring the history of what the Catholic Church has tried to do as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing that scares me, is just this whole precedent that was kind of established about, like, we are going to have the separate, in our democracy, which I'm kind of disgusted that the Supreme Court is, because I'm like, the whole point of your job is to uphold the Constitution.
Right. It's we could really digress into some interesting conversations here, because I think what this teaches us, right, in addition to the religious aspects, the broader lesson here is this didn't happen overnight. This has been a 20-year game played by Mitch McConnell. This is not the Roberts court, it is the McConnell court. When Obama was president, he had the opportunity to appoint somebody to the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell refused to hold hearings to approve his appointee. Unconstitutionally so, in my mind. However, there's not a spelled out remedy for that. So they were at loggerheads. Nothing happened. A new president came in. They nominated a different justice, and lo and behold, that person got a hearing and approved right away. And this was a year and a half, a year out from Obama not being president anymore. And they gave all sorts of pretextual explanations about why they wouldn't want to do this. But in the end, it had been done before, that people had appointed Supreme Court justices towards the last year, well within their last year of their presidency. It was just we're nasty conservative Christians. We are going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. We are going to overturn Lemon, which we should talk about later. And we are going to do away with separation of church and state. This has been the plan all along. And people were not paying enough attention then. And that's really what made the the 4 votes on Oklahoma work. That's what did away with Roe v. Wade. That's what did away with Lemon. It was all a multi-decade plan by the Heritage Foundation, who did Project 2025, by the way, and people like Mitch McConnell, to undermine the stability of the expertise on the court. You do still have experts that can genuinely disagree. We can have conversations about, hey, we've got an establishment clause and we have a free exercise clause. There is some tension there, and I'd be happy to have that conversation. But what we have now are some hacks in the form of Alito and Kavanaugh, who operate on conservative grievance. Really, if you read their opinions, it's just literally bullet points of conservative grievance and not a lot of legal reasoning. And they use that as an excuse to utterly ignore the scholarship, the history, everything that I talked about so far.
Okay, so there's so much I can say on this because it's so gross. But so I'm gonna save that for a
Mhm.
rant later because I'll rant.
Of course, of course.
You know me for a while now. I have opinions on shit.
Right.
So for people that don't know who Lemon is, I'm
Okay.
gonna talk about that case.
Sure. So the lemon test was a test that was developed back in 1970 something. Lemon test SCOTUS. I want to get the date right here. 71. Okay. So 71 was Lemon v. Kurtzman. The details don't matter. What comes out of it is a test to say, when does a law violate the Establishment Clause? So to understand the problem here, you have to say, okay, what does the Constitution actually say? The government shall not, right, prohibit the free exercise. That is the free exercise clause, but there's also they shall not establish a religion. That's the establishment clause. So you have the free exercise
Right.
clause that says the government can't prohibit the free exercise of religion, and then you have a separate clause that says you cannot establish a religion. And it comes down to saying, what is the establishment of religion? Obviously, the extreme case would be Congress passes a law that says Christianity is now the official religion of the United States. And if you are not a Christian, you will be taxed a non-Christian tax that will go to re-education camps that will teach your kids what it is to be Christian, and that they're going to go to hell and burn forever if they don't believe this stuff in every grade in school. That's the worst. That's the theocracy, right?
Possible thing you could do.
Right.
One
The
of
most
the worst.
minor thing would be a case like this was from last year in the Supreme Court of a religious school wants to receive a government benefit, i.e., our playground needs a new mulch surface or new rubber pellet surface, right?
Right.
And the government has a program where you can get that, but the government denies us use because we are a religious school, and the government doesn't want to give money to a religious school because they view that that will be the first pixel into drawing a picture of establishing a religion. The Supreme Court held last year, no, that's small enough, but they did so after getting rid of lemon. So the history of lemon is it required three things of a law for it to be okay. It must have a secular purpose. It can't be motivated by religious reasons. The primary effect of it cannot be to advance or inhibit religion. It must be neutral in its impact, and it can't create an excessive entanglement between the government and religion. So avoid over-regulation and oversight of religious entities, right? Those were the three prongs. And like many other Supreme Court rules, it's this sniff test or a weighing test of like, it's guidelines. It's a framework in which evidence can be presented and arguments can be made as to whether something goes too far or not, right? The conservative side of the court and the conservatives of the country have never liked lemon, not because it's different from other tests that the Supreme Court have put out. It is just as wishy-washy. It is just as sort of, cloudy, make what you will of it type of test, which is what you have to do at this level where you're trying to create a test for a million interactions of humans about an issue every day in the country.
Right.
But they didn't like it because anything that benefited Christians trying to get money from the government tended to lose. That's why they didn't like lemon. So flash forward to Bremerton School District, which was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, before the Supreme Court. You may remember this case as the public high school football coach who was holding prayers on the field, right?
I think we were on that episode together.
Okay. Could be, yeah. So
I think we were.
So in that case, the court held that this coach was improperly fired. He was fired because he was violating the policies of the school that were designed to prevent establishment of religion. We don't want public school employees, taking time out of a kid's school day to lead them in Christian prayer or any sort of sectarian prayer or any prayer. The problem with this case is the majority, which I believe was written by Kavanaugh, which is not a surprise because he is the frat boy of the Supreme Court and has the worst legal scholarship, right?
He's a interesting dude.
He cited,
he's a bro dude. He's a bro dude with power.
He is. Christian grievance. He works on vibes. He doesn't work on, precedent or anything. But he cited a bunch of facts. Like, hey, the coach didn't do this during the game. He did it by himself off in the corner of the field. He didn't do it during school. He didn't do it in the locker room. All of this was contradicted by the evidence that was introduced at trial, right? You don't introduce evidence at the Supreme Court, you introduce evidence at trial, and then appeals sort of figure out if was that evidence introduced properly, was the reasoning of the courts sound, did anything break the rules, etc. So I believe it was, I think it was Sotomayor who wrote the dissent, and she did something I've never seen done in a Supreme Court opinion. She brought the receipts. She literally printed pictures in her opinion. So you have paragraphs of text, and then she has pictures, multiple pictures of the coach in the middle of the football field with hundreds of people kneeling around him. She introduced evidence from trial that said, not only did he do this immediately before, immediately after the game, not in the corner like Kavanaugh said, but he also did it in the locker room. And like further inside school property. Not only did he do that, he called the opposing coach ahead of time and said, hey, I'm doing this prayer thing. If you'd like, please have your players join me. So it wasn't what Kavanaugh said at all. The fact that he had to lie, and that wasn't the main report, that wasn't like the headline news on every newspaper, like
that we
Supreme Court opinion lies. Like it's just like, so she brings the receipts and says this is the death of Lemon, and sure enough, they overturned Lemon. They did away with Lemon with Remington. They said that's not useful anymore to use Lemon. We're going to use this other standard, which is basically a historical standard, whatever the fuck that means. They didn't explain it, of course, because they never liked to do that.
Why would they explain it? No. Why would they explain it, Graham? Why?
Right. So they say Lemon's dead. Now we're going to say, basically, if we've always done it, or if you can find a historical example of it, then it's okay. Or if you can find a historical example of it not being okay, then it's not okay. To which I then stand and point, and with my mouth open, pointing at Madison and Jefferson, saying that you can't tax people to pay for public schools that teach Christianity. I point at that, and then I point at those four fuckers voting to allow it in the Oklahoma City case. So there is no shame. It is all hypocrisy. It is all Trump level bullshit that is coming out of the Supreme Court. And I never thought I would say that in my lifetime. I have always been sort of a respected justices, but these guys are, especially Alito, who is just evil, and Kavanaugh, who is just incompetent. It's depraved hypocrisy, and they should be ashamed, and they should be impeached, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm not surprised anymore. I think that like this has been, I think because we saw coming. Like I'm just like, I'm like, this is the slow chipping away of living under a democracy. This is a slow chipping away of rights and freedoms that we kind of taken for granted. And if you you're paying attention, and I think part of it is this is kind of like a pet theory. Like I'm not saying that this is proof or anything, but sure. Over time, religion has been above reproach. Like you can't criticize it. You can't, like people have their beliefs, their very secret beliefs. And I think that ties into people not paying attention because like religion is seen as a good, that when the Heritage Foundation and these other conservative Christian groups were playing the long game since the 1950s.
Yep.
And now, 60 years later, the fruition of those efforts
yep.
are now the roosters are coming home to roost. And everybody's like, when did this happen? I'm like, because this was the slow burn. If they came in and started doing this like a kibosh and just kind of pulling everything, everybody be freaking out and being like, what the hell are you doing? It's that slow, like, slow thing of just like, let's just keep picking things away and focus on emotional topics like abortion rather
Right.
than like, what does it mean if we are under a theocracy? And that
Yeah.
means what is the right religion? Because like, let's say you're a Baptist versus like a Methodist, both
Right.
Christian, but which one gets president?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. To give you a little more fodder for your
Yeah.
conspiracy theory,
Okay.
so let's go back to the Nixon administration.
Okay.
Nixon has a terrible time of it on TV against this young, handsome Kennedy guy, right? And
Damn those Kennedys.
yeah, damn those handsome Kennedys. Some of them didn't turn out too well, but the age of newspaper was dead with that debate. Okay. And the age of mass media, as in the form of AV, audiovisual stuff, was now the law of the land, right? You couldn't rely on radio, you couldn't rely on paper, and you couldn't rely on just your arguments as much anymore. Now you had to look the part, you had to project confidence in your image. And there was this little guy that worked in the Nixon administration who noticed all this, and he wrote a very interesting memo to Nixon, but also basically to the whole GOP, saying, this is the way of the future. We need to get into this space and control the airwaves so we can control the messaging. And that person was Roger Ailes, who you may recognize as somebody who went on to make sure that Fox News was created.
Oh, that motherfucker.
Right.
Yeah.
Rupert Murdoch is the person who owns it, but Roger Ailes was the guy who made sure that that happened. And so there's a direct line from people realizing at the very onset of politics on social media of the time, which is TV with commentary around it, that we have to control this. And so you get the memo, you get Roger Ailes, you get Fox TV, and you can also draw a straight line through Fox TV to most major events that have happened that have brought about Christian nationalism. You can look at, so if you go back to Obama running for president, we had what happened. Where's the birth certificate, right? Birtherism came about. Who was one of the major critics at that time? It was Trump. Trump came out and did interviews. Who said, "Yeah, I don't know where it is. I have the best people," as he always does. They're in Hawaii right now. I have investigators. They're finding very interesting stuff. Right, is what he said. This is a quote from Trump. Of course, nothing comes up. It's all bullshit, but it's all dog whistle racism and also dog whistle Christianity, because it's not Barack Obama, it's Barack Hussein Obama. And this is all being given air on the Roger Ailes created Fox News. Obama loses that election. And what happens? We have the Tea Party created. How was the Tea Party created? The initial events from the Tea Party were Fox News sponsored. They created Fox News events covering Tea Party rallies, as they were called on Fox News. And that is what created the Tea Party. So this is just one example of how the people in power, and I know I sound like a crazy nut job, right? But this is all
we all do, because like
you have to use these words, the people in power, and you go read the memo. But here,
like
it's
you
not
sound like you're part of, like, there's lizard people and the Illuminati and blah blah blah. But really,
it's all out
it's
in
like
the open.
no, it's like no, there is conspiracies and shit going on. It's just that we know about them.
Yeah, it's documented,
and they're all idiots
in print, and it's on video, and you can hear them saying it. It's like it's so frustrating, because most conspiracy theories, there's this central conceit of some secret information that nobody can get their whole hands on, that if it were revealed would blow the whole thing wide open. And yet there's all these clues to the existence of it, right? but you can never get the
Right.
secret information. Here, the secret information is there. It's in memos, it's in court records, it's on TV. It's just, you just have
Right.
to be paying attention. And that's my broader point. Time and time again, history has taught us that when these events happen, when the rubber really hits the road, when something happens that is really severely going to threaten this country, the press has fallen the fuck down most of the time. You
Yep.
go to Watergate, that happened because somebody came to the press. You go to the Pentagon Papers, good example of the press doing a great job, right? Those are the days, the Watergate era, the 70s, where investigative journalism was really doing a great job. Now we have things like Bremerton come along, and it hardly gets any play in the newspapers at all. Mostly because I think there's a lot of Christians in this country still, but also because I think the reporters don't understand what it meant to get rid of the Lemon test, to have the Bremerton opinion, and to not see the writing on the wall that we would be faced with what we're faced with today, which is a bunch of schools putting the 10 Commandments into the classroom. The Oklahoma public schools, the Oklahoma public school superintendent, if you remember this nut job, mandating that there be a Christian Bible in every classroom and that it be part of the curriculum. I don't know if you remember this from last year.
Yes.
But pastors in schools,
Ryan Walters.
I don't remember his name. I just think of him as the okay superintendent, because he's just okay, because he's a nut job. So
yeah.
So that's just one
Ryan Walters, the
small
Oklahoma
example.
State Superintendent of Public Education. And
Yeah.
he's a terrible person. He's a terrible person.
This is only happening because of the court we have. People know that under any other court, this would be laughed out of the courtroom immediately, but they know that we've got this window, so they're doing all of this so that they will get sued. They will spend millions of dollars in court to get to the Supreme Court on the off chance that they can get these religious nut jobs that are on the court to agree with them. And it's working. It is working. They are moving the needle.
Like, just because I looked up his name, like the top story out of there is that they're looking for a curriculum that will match. They're looking for a textbook that will match the wackadoo revisionist history they want to do.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, because that's not facts, man.
Right. And that is an amazingly good point. Rehnquist, Justice Rehnquist, I don't know if it was in Lemon, it was in that period. He had a dissent on a case about Establishment Clause, and it had to do with the 10 Commandments being in schools. And his dissent was basically, but our entire Western world, the entire legal system and the moral system of the Western world is based on the 10 Commandments. That was basically his dissent. So it is valid for schools to teach the 10 Commandments as an important historical document for the foundation of U.S. law. Nothing could be further from the truth. I want to put that out here. There was a famous atheist quote by, what was his name? The attorney, I'm blanking. He said, anything good in the 10 Commandments is not new. Right? That's part of his quote. Like, there's nothing original in 10 Commandments with respect to innovative ideas about let's not kill each other, let's not steal, let's try to be honest, right? Let's not rape people.
Right.
Don't lie. That's not even the 10 Commandments. It's just don't covet people, right? Don't lie. We find that on Sumerian tablets that predate the 10 Commandments by 800 years, right? That's not new. So his argument, however, is now going to be the argument that Louisiana is raising. If you read their bill from last year that mandated the 10 Commandments in the classrooms, Rehnquist's arguments from decades ago are exactly what they put into, at the beginning of a bill, they do a bunch of whereases, the preamble of the bill. Whereas Louisiana is awesome, and whereas it's a state that loves its children, and whereas we think that Christianity is freaking awesome, and whereas, and what they get is
like that correlation thing, like we love children,
right.
So let's do Christianity like that. It's like what those two things have nothing to do with each other. there.
No, it doesn't. But because it's about school, they have to say we love our kids, and
Yeah.
and then they add the Rehnquist stuff in the preamble.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas this is a very important document to the history of our country, and whereas all of Western culture got its morals from this document, and whereas, none of which is true. All of academia laughs at that. And again, it doesn't matter because that's their facade, that's their premise, that's their pretext. And when you get callers on shows like Atheist Experience, you do sometimes hear real confusion. People really don't understand that this is not true. We had a caller a couple of weeks ago where he didn't even understand what Christian nationalism is. I was talking about Thomas being a Christian nationalist, and he's like, just because you don't agree with him, you call him a Christian nationalist? And both of us at the same time said, could you please define what you think Christian nationalism is? And he thought, well, being a Christian and being proud of your country. And that is genuinely a point of confusion. The man just didn't know what we were talking about. So I think people hear news bites on Fox News. They hear news bites from Joe Rogan and on, Russell Brand's podcast or from whichever is the popular
podcast? Oh my
Russell
God.
Brand, the new
I did not
born
know
again
Russell
Christian
Brand had a podcast because I think he's a terrible
scumbag.
human being, so I don't pay attention to him.
So they hear all of this and they really don't know anything about history. They don't even know the words that are being used. They just know me Christian, me like stories that say Christian good, and that's all. And then they vote for their guy. So it's our job to educate. It's our job to do the long, hard slog of one-on-one conversations or small conversations to educate people so that when Aunt Bertha at the Thanksgiving meal comes in and says, well, Trump is, putting Jesus back into school, we can say, well, actually, blah, 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 in a polite, educated way and teach her all of this stuff that, hey, under God wasn't in the Pledge of Allegiance until the McCarthyism in the 50s. And I've told that to countless friends, and they're all surprised. They didn't know that. So we have to keep doing that to make sure that the man in the street is more educated than we've required them to be in the past.
This is the thing, and I keep saying this, is that living in the internet era where information is at your fingertips is sometimes you're looking up cat memes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're looking up porn. Sometimes you're looking up, how long do I boil an egg for? And then, which is all there. And you can also look up stuff about, lizard people, and you can also learn about what does the Supreme Court actually do? There's all that information's out there. Like I say, you have access to all the information, which means you have access to all the information, and that includes the bad information.
Right.
And if you don't know what you're looking at, you're gonna hear Christian nationalists and just think, that it means that you're Christian and you're part of. I'm like, do you know what nationalism is? If you don't know what nationalism is, if you weren't taught that, you're just going to put those two words together, and and it's like, no, nationalism is actually not a good thing.
No. If you put them together, it's using the mechanisms of the government in order to promote your particular religion. And it's scary. And it is the stated purpose of many people online. It is the subtextual purpose of a lot of organizations like the Heritage Foundation. They are the people who did Project 2025, which is what we're seeing now with the dismantling of our agencies. It's straight out of their playbook. It is install leaders at the top of agencies who are incompetent but loyal, fire everybody that's not a loyalist, and let government die through incompetence and apathy. That is Project 2025.
So they're doing the fascism.
Yes. 100%.
Today that always happens under fascism, and it never goes well because usually when people get really mad, and they're like wait a second, we didn't set up for this stuff, and then usually the fascist leader is, especially in more progressive societies, don't really hold on to power. So
yeah.
Just today, I'm like, history's not going to look kindly upon you. I'm just letting you know. We're going to look back in this era and be like, holy fuck.
They don't give a shit. The thing that really astounds me, the thing that baffles me, is prior to Trump era, if you asked me, how attractive it was to be a member of the House or a senator, I would have ranked it pretty high, but not that high. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of moral responsibility. You're going to end up killing people through policies you create. I raised the speed limit by 5 miles an hour. Statistically speaking, I am killing people and I am helping the economy. And
Right. It's
that's that's a
these
problem,
ethical
right?
questions that you have to, they're not easy. That's why I
No,
don't want that job.
right. And you're
That's too much
living
for me.
under a you're living under a magnifying glass, right? But
Yeah.
the only explanation for how Trump came to power and retained that power is that being in that position must be so fucking crack addiction like positive for the people there that they are willing to go out and eat shit on camera, almost literally, for Trump in order to keep their seats. Because the way that Trump has done this is to threaten everybody. He's gained a certain amount of populism. He's got people behind him, and he's got the ability to say, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to run a more Trumpy person against you in the primary and you will lose your job. The proper fucking response to that, to everybody in Congress, is, so be it. I'm not going to sell my soul to the devil and destroy my country for my children or my grandchildren just because I want to keep my fucking job. There is life after Congress. You can go on speaking tours and make a lot of money. You can go be an adjunct professor at any fucking school.
There's so many former congressmen that have taken up other types of jobs or do like speaking tours or are advisors.
Go become
to law schools and all this type of shit. I'm like, you're going to have a life after Congress.
Go be an automatic partner at a lobbying firm or a law firm, and all you bring with you is your Rolodex, and you're going to have a job. Like, it's got to be something else. It's got to be some boner for authority. It's got to be literally drugs and hookers that they're getting. It's got to be the insider trading. There's got to be a totality of the ego stroking you get from everybody around you, like you are Prince walking in the door for a concert. I don't understand it, but that's my only conclusion. And so when I see that is what caused Trumpism, that nobody on that side of the aisle and some in the middle are not willing to stand up with this, because for fear of losing a fucking election, we need to fix that problem first and foremost. And that problem was created by what? In part, Citizens United and the Supreme Court opinion that said money equals speech. If you're a billionaire like Musk, you get to have the biggest megaphone in the country when it comes to political elections. And that is not how they do it in other countries. And it's okay in other countries. So we need to look at that and fix that problem, because until we get money out of politics and we term limit these fuckers and we have greater sunshine, as far as you get elected to, I'm going on my rant. You get elected to, you want to run. You want to run for Senate. You want to run for the House. You want to run for presidency. You have to expose all of your personal finances, go through an audit, and then put all of your personal investments, money, whatever, down to some limit into a blind trust that you have no idea on. And then for the entirety of your public service, your finances are an open book. We need to do all of this, and it will maybe stop the next Trump. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it was fine. It was a good rant. So, like, I think that, like, we kind of put politicians on like this pedestal, which is not good, because they're just people.
Correct.
Yeah, like nobody's your daddy. Like, I'm sorry, nobody's daddy. Like, these are like, there's no parents paying attention. Like, it's just us. And if we're truly living in a democracy and these people work for us, then that means, like, just like any other employer, there's a certain expectation I have for you. And that if you're not meeting such expectation, then you're fired. And also, as well, it's just like, I kind of believe with you on term limits. Like, we have a term limits for president. Why are we not applying that to Congress, the Congress and judicial branches. I'm just saying, and legislative, like I'm just saying, not that great. Like,
I
and I think it's
agree.
important to do those things.
In my youth, I was on the fence about term limits for certain positions because there is an argument to be made that you want expertise to continue. If it's not good, the whole idea of the legislative farmer is romantic. Mr. Smith goes to Washington is romantic. But when the rubber hits the road, you have some concerns about if we turned them all over at the same time, nobody would know what the hell they're doing. Nobody would know how to strike a deal. Nobody would understand the complex world we live in from the regulatory state we've created with all of this technology. There's a real problem there. So yes, I would in my youth sort of been like, I see your point. It is a tough call. I'm on the fence. After seeing this side of it, it's like, it's worth it. It's worth it. Just put the term limits in.
And it doesn't even have to be. It could be like 8 years. It doesn't have to be like 2. It could be 8.
Staggered, so you're not
presidency,
losing.
you get 8 years. That's all you get. And during that time, that means that you are serving the public. That means that your finances and everything are public. Yeah. Because guess what? I'm paying your fucking salary.
Correct.
So.
Correct. Absolutely. I think that. People, I think you made a very good point, is what I'm getting at, when you talked about there is no daddy. They aren't daddy. We put them on a pedestal. And it's kind of this thing I've been playing with in my head for a while now as I look at religious people. And it is, especially amongst Christians and evangelical Christians, Christianity teaches you and it reinforces what is taught in regular society to a greater extent, that truth comes from is dictated to you by an authority source. Mm-hmm. You are taught that the father is the head of the household and is not to be questioned, that God is the head of the universe and is not to be questioned, to the point that I don't know if you've seen that famous clip of this pastor, a big megachurch pastor, who said, if the Bible said that 1 + 1 = 3, I would believe it. And I would work my whole life to try to understand why that is true, but I would accept that it's true. I can't think of a better example of just
willing to ignore basic reality.
It's the same thing as North Korea and Trump. It's like today, Trump said he's deploying Marines. For the first time in my memory, and I think in the first time in the history of the country, he's deploying Marines inside the country to, quote unquote, protect federal property. That's a police power. That's what the police are there to do. It's not federal land. Yeah. And they're not trained to do that, et cetera. But that is when you hear Trump dictate to his masses that this is constitutional, that the protests are an invasion, so he has the power to do this. Hell, when he says, this guy in my home state, Maryland, that I deported by accident, well, he's an MS-13 guy because I misread the Photoshop numbers that are on his fingers. Right. And everybody just nods along, right? In this,
like there's
these Emperor's New Clothes style fear of exclusion, as Tim Minchin likes to call it, right? I'm going to nod along for fear of exclusion. It's the same goddamn thing. It comes from the same place. Truth comes from authority. Truth is dictated down to me, and I accept it and I move on.
Thank you.
Hello, kitty cat.
Yeah, I got a baby because my husband brought me food, so now she wants, and now Cannabis wants to eat. So, but I think that's the because even when my dad was Republican, he was old school Republican, and he also said question authority. And that government, there's this thing, people think that if you are progressive or democratic, you want the government to do all the things, and it's no, it's we need to progress because people have needs that need to be addressed, and it kind of has to be equal amongst the populace. So that's one thing, but also too, I just want my government to provide me with healthcare, education, and make sure people that would want to harm me aren't taking pisses in my backyard. That's what I want. Right. Everything else about who I sleep with, my health care, what I do with my own body and all that type of stuff, I don't think the government needs to be involved in that.
To the extent that
That's why we have
you
limits.
still want courts to enforce certain crimes, such as practicing medicine without a license, right? If it's your own body, but you saw a guy that claimed he was a doctor and turns out he was a fraud, you'd want him prosecuted. So we still have regulation. That's regulation of speech. So don't tell me in this country free speech is absolute when I can put you in jail for saying I'm a doctor and here's what's going on, or I can commit fraud and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I totally agree with you. The libertarians are right until they're wrong, right? They're right in that we do want police and an army, but we also want roads and an electric system and an internet and all of these things. We also want a social safety net. My very first episode of my podcast, back when I started, this a couple of years ago now, I was trying to come up with a topic that could be non-religious focused. My main focus is the rise of Christian nationalism as powered by misinformation. That's sort of the theme. But as Trump has gone on, I've gotten a little more political. But the very first episode was about the McDonald's hot coffee case. I don't know if you remember this case, right?
I do.
Okay. Yep. So everybody knows what happened.
What's
that? So everybody knows.
I watched a documentary on it. Sorry.
Oh, Hot Coffee. Did you watch Hot Coffee? The documentary, Hot Coffee? They covered the case and then they went into medical malpractice and the OBGYN.
It was very well done.
Yes. So and if anybody wants to watch one thing that sort of shows you how we can all agree on something, and go watch that documentary. And that's why I did that first episode, is I recounted the case and I said we all were convinced. And I play at the beginning a montage. I think I stole some of the clips from Hot Coffee and other sources of people joking about and Katie Couric's reading the nightly news, somebody we grew up with as a trusted voice. And her quote is, "A woman is suing McDonald's because she was driving with hot coffee between her legs and she spilled it and now she's suing." And it's like, that's a fucking wrong. That's you're not lying. You're conveying information you were told, but it is wrong. And the entire documentary's point is, it's one small case, but that case was used to try to enact what's called tort reform. So this is another GOP conspiracy out in the open, where tort reform. So for your audience, torts are lawsuits between private individuals, right? This is another area where we want government. We want government to settle disputes between people because it replaces what? Blood in the streets, right? So whenever anybody says the U.S. is a litigious society, I'm like, no, it's not when you compare it to honor killings and blood in the streets in other countries and other countries. We're just as litigious as any other place. People get into conflicts and we want third parties to resolve it. So a tort is when you come to work for me and I say, could you please, mulch these trees, and I don't give you proper training and you get your arm chopped off in the mulcher, right? You want to be able to sue me because I was negligent in training you, right? I knew, or should have known, that letting somebody near one of these machines that had no warning signs on it, no training, you were probably going to get hurt. So tort reform, the GOP, who owns all the businesses and who gets sued for this sort of stuff, for OSHA violations, they also don't want OSHA, they came up with this idea of tort reform. We can sell Joe Voter on the fact that the legal system is rigged against you. And it is, they called it jackpot judgments, right? You can win a lawsuit by just suing on the craziest thing. And what's the example they gave? The hot coffee case. When you actually read the facts, i.e., she wasn't driving, she was parked, she wasn't in the driver's seat, her nephew was. They parked because they wanted to be careful. The coffee was being served at that McDonald's by well over 20 degrees hotter than any other country in the coffee in the country, because theoretically it kept it fresher longer. McDonald's had been sued, had heard lots of claims, 800 claims a year of people getting second and third degree burns from this coffee, and had done nothing. They'd paid people to keep quiet and sweep it under the rug,
which is insane to me. Like 800 people.
800 a
in
year.
complaints, and they're just like, no. I'm like, it's gonna come and bite you in the ass,
They're
man.
paying these people a couple of grand a year, but theoretically, this is saving them millions in coffee, because the theory was you keep coffee hotter, it stays fresher longer, so I don't have to throw out extra pots of coffee because they went bad. They stay longer, so I make less coffee. I make more money per pot, basically.
Right.
So long story short, her attorney, this is pre-internet, so nobody knows. No two victims. There's no subreddit for hot coffee Verns at McDonald's subreddit. Nobody's sharing this information. Her attorney, she doesn't even hire an attorney. She writes them a letter. This naive woman says, hey, I got third-degree burns. I had to stay in the ICU for multiple days. I had to get multiple skin grafts. I'm going to have to be on medication for at least 2 years. I have to have physical therapy. Like, she was destroyed. She's this elderly woman.
Poor woman.
And all she asked for from McDonald's was, could you please reimburse the part of the medical bills my insurance company won't pay for? Because I can't really take in what today would be about a $50,000 hit. I can't do that. And McDonald's told her to fuck off. They basically said, we'll give you $100 or something. It was something really insulting. So she hires a lawyer because you can't take that hit. And this lawyer, he does his job. He researches it. He subpoenas all this shit from McDonald's, and lo and behold, discovers what's been going on. And she ends up winning. What does the jury award her? 2 days worth of coffee sales of McDonald's. They said, that's what we're going to award her. It's 2 days worth of coffee sales, which was millions of dollars. And that's the headline that Katie Curry rigs out. She wins massive amount of money because she spilled coffee on her while she was driving with a coffee between her legs. That's the only story. When you read the story that was published in Albuquerque, where this I think it's Albuquerque, where this happened, it was like a 600, 700, 800 word story. When it went out to the state level, it was down to a couple hundred words. When it got out on the national wire, where all the national news picked it up, it was 46 words. And that's how they like it. And that's what the GOP hung their hat on. And they used that case to come this fucking close to passing national tort reform, which said if you go to work for a company and you lose your arm because they fucked up, sorry, you can only sue them for, $100 grand. I don't know about you, but I would not be willing to trade my arm for $100 grand.
No,
and I don't think anybody would.
I don't think there's an amount of money that I would trade my arm for.
Yeah. Do you know
why? For everything.
You know why? Oh, dating back to your theory about this conspiracy theory, dating back to the 50s, Ronald Reagan, governor in the 50s and 60s and all that stuff, becomes president during this time, and he's giving a speech before the National Tort Reform Association. And you know what he says?
Oh.
He tells this story. Oh. This guy is making a phone call in a phone booth. See, there used to be these things called phone booths, and they would be out on the street. You could get in them. Superman would change his clothes. Anyway, so this guy's making a phone call in a phone booth, and a drunk driver comes along and hits the phone booth and injures the guy. And Reagan says, and of course the guy sued, but you won't believe who he sued. He sued the phone company. And everybody moans, oh my God, this nation is crazy. And he's making an argument for tort reform. What did Reagan know that he didn't tell the audience? What he knew that he lied about by not including it was that phone booth was at a very dangerous intersection. That phone booth had been hit by cars, drunk or otherwise, dozens of times in the past couple of years. That phone booth had a door that was not repaired because it had previously been clipped by a car. Eyewitnesses saw that the man in the phone booth saw the drunk driver coming, tried to get out of the phone booth, and couldn't
got stuck
before the car hit him. Reagan knew all of this and did not tell his audience. All he said was, guy in a phone booth gets hit by a car and sues the phone company. Therefore, you should vote for tort reform. This is what the GOP has been doing about tort reform, about Christian nationalism, about gay rights, about anything Trump is trying. This is the point of my first episode. If they are going to be willing to lie to you about these things because they know you aren't following the fucking details, they will lie to you about everything. And if political leaders can do it, your religious leaders will do it as well. And that's how I started my podcast. Sorry for the long rant, but it goes to the point of what's going on in this country. Our press is not investigative enough. We do not value our press enough. It is losing money, and they're closing up shop because we are not subscribing to the papers we should subscribe to. And the population is not paying attention. They're not interested enough in facts. They are interested in things that make them feel good. And it's going to spell our demise.
And also too, like, I'm not saying this is an excuse. It's not. But like, if you are a 32-year-old woman with 2 young kids, and you're you don't have time to absorb the news. Like you're like, you watch CNN or Fox News or whatever you watch, get little sound bites of what's going on, and then you go, and then maybe on your Facebook feed have your local news, which you scan while you're fucking around, and then you go on with your day. As someone that used to be a young mother, I understand that.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, this is the thing. I'm like, but also like, everybody's busy, and I get it. And people want to, I want to feel good too. I'm totally biased. I've been called out on my bias, and I appreciate the people that do that. Thank you. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, when we're talking about things that are going to affect the average person, when we're already being squeezed enough as it is,
right?
It's just like, you don't want to live you don't want to live under theocracy, and you don't want to be a part of people like corporations running the government.
Correct.
I'm like, do you want to live in the future of Blade Runner? Do you? I don't think you do.
That's the analogy I use with my friends all the time. We are at a point where we're trying to choose between a Star Trek future and a Blade Runner future. Yeah. And the Blade Runner future is winning heavily because the internet is so much more powerful than I thought it would be for the forces of self-affirmation. It was in the day you and I, I'm guessing, both remember pre-internet times, right? Yes. I don't want to guess. Okay.
Yeah, I was born in 70. I am a Zennial, born in 77, so okay. I'm right on the cusp.
I got you by a few years. I'm Gen X. Yeah. I'm 1970. Yeah. So I remember a time when the crazies of the town were the singular crazy of the town, and people would shun them, or when they interacted with them would tell them they're wrong, and they got no positive feedback from anywhere. The internet comes along, and naive me, I think, wow, this is going to be a revolution, especially when the iPhone came out. I remember when I saw my first iPhone, my friend James, I think it had it. It was either Eric or James. And the fact you could scroll things on this window blew my mind. And then he showed me how you could access websites in the pocket of the phone that's in your pocket. And I thought instantly, I had this moment of like, oh my God, the information age is here. Every single fact can be verified with a few seconds worth of notice. And I was so fucking naive. I thought, wow, there could even be information overload. We're going to have clearinghouses like Consumer Reports for facts, where people will put the Consumer Report seal of approval on various news sources to say, yep, these guys don't fucking bullshit. They only have one half of one Pinocchio, or whatever they call it now. Yep. And I couldn't have been more wrong. It was immediately porn and anything that confirms my previously held beliefs. That's what the internet's for now.
Yeah, and
I don't object to the porn part. It's just the self-delusion echo chamber.
That you can have porn and get facts. I don't think it's mutually exclusive.
You can even get facts about porn. It's crazy.
Yeah, you can get facts about porn, and you could probably have a porn star give you facts.
Absolutely, if you pay them enough, they will read you Wikipedia. I am sure I would be willing to bet that. But yeah, now we have. Everybody runs to their corner. And, everybody runs to their corner, and the guy that used to be the sole crazy guy in my small town is now one of 50,000 people on the Nazi Stormfront page deciding they're going to march in Charlottesville and kill people. That's what happened, right, with the internet. And Trump took advantage of that, and as did Russia. And if you want to read... I think the best book that shows you where we're going that came out a few years ago was Rachel Maddow's book called Blowout. I think I have a copy of it. I don't I think it's called Blowout. It's about the oil industry in Russia, and basically it's about countries that are down on their luck finding natural resources and how that inevitably leads to oligarchy and dictatorship. And then in the last third of the book, she turns the camera around and looks at the United States and says, you see how Putin makes sure that every country around him is corrupt and everybody in his inner circle is corrupt so that he has dirt on them and he can kick them out at a moment's
Right.
notice using a fake judicial process? Look at what Trump is doing. This is what Trump is doing. He's deploying the Marines. He's looking for, I don't want to be alarmist. But we have to be on alert for this. The bright side.
Look what happened
I'm
over
trying
the
to
weekend.
say, what's the bright side? So the
Look
bright
what
side
happened over the weekend in Los Angeles.
Right.
It looked
So
like Rodney King riots.
Exactly.
Because luckily only 300 of the National Guard, he asked for 3,000, only 300 showed up. So,
he's
okay.
So the issue
and he
is,
went over California's governor.
Correct. And they've already sued. So my next episode on my podcast is going to be about the history of the XYZ affair, which is an interesting thing that has to do with tensions between U.S. and France after our revolution and during their revolution when we were staying neutral, and how that relates to Madison, Marbury versus Madison, and why that's important today, i.e., what happens if the Supreme Court issues an order and Trump chooses to ignore it. The Supreme Court doesn't have an army. There's nobody there to enforce anything. It will come down to individuals choosing not to obey what have been deemed as illegal orders. And he is testing weather balloons today. What he wants to do, I am confident this is in the back of his mind. He wants to use protests or even just illegal immigration, as he likes to call it, as an excuse to declare a national emergency and suspend elections. This is I would have laughed at this 10 years ago. Now I recognize it's not a non-zero chance. It may be very small, but so was January 6th.
But still, small. It's a problem. Like, that's what happens when you don't have people who watches the watchers.
Yes.
That's kind of like, it's like, well, you have to be accountable even with an unchecked power.
Yes.
It's not, I don't remember who said this. I think that power doesn't corrupt, it reveals, because it shows what the guy that wanted the power, what he always wanted to do.
Yes.
You give someone the ability to do whatever they want, you'll see what that guy wanted to do. And that's what we're seeing. This is like, because there are people that get power and don't corrupt systems. They're not, they have make hard decisions and they don't fuck everything up. Somebody gets power like Trump, and you see what he always wanted to do.
Yes, absolutely. And we should be afraid of nothing more than the person who runs and gets elected on I'm not government and gets elected to government. Because now anything they do
no sense if you think about it for 2 seconds.
Anything they do in their electorate's mind is now anti-government and therefore okay. If I run on anti-governing, then I don't have to govern. I have to dictate. If I come in and say, that Supreme Court has got it wrong, they are traitors, they need to be impeached, and I'm not going to listen to that. Well, that's just because they're part of the government. They're part of the system that's been broken. So it's okay because Trump's one of us. He's an anti-government guy. He's cleaning the swamp out. And these soft other presidents in the past have put up with this bullshit for far too long. So we're going to send in the Marines to shoot American citizens. That's just anti-government.
Tyranny.
Yeah.
That's tyranny.
No. That's law and order, Helen. Law and order for all the right people.
And what did every fascist say? I'm going to bring law and order back.
I wouldn't mind it so much, right?
Immigrants and othering queer people, and on it goes. And then that's when you get deportations and concentration camps and all that stuff.
Right.
Like
I wouldn't mind it so much.
This is the beginning, and I mean, yes, it does give me some hope that people are paying attention. And actually this is where the internet is good, because
yes,
you can go on TikTok and there's people actually reporting facts. So you're not immune to your local newspaper, and you don't know what's going on. It's not like the 1940s where we knew what was going on in Germany, but we didn't know what was going on in Germany.
Right.
Now we know what's going on in El Salvador.
Yes, exactly. No, what I was going to joke is I wouldn't mind the Law and Order dictator so much if it was actual law.
Right.
They're not. That's the problem. You were mentioning earlier the single mom not having time to pay attention to the news. My background is FDA regulatory law. It's a real sleepy subject, but it touches on a lot of the topics we're talking about, because one of the roles of the FDA, I represented people importing FDA regulated goods coming into the United States when they had problems or they had questions about how to do that, right? So I would argue with the FDA. What do you mean these light bulbs, which by the way are regulated by FDA because they emit radiation and all that stuff? What do you mean these light bulbs are not conforming with policy, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Here's the documentation or whatever, right? So I'd argue with the FDA all day long. But I gained so much respect for them in that job because every single person I spoke with, their tip-top priority was protecting not only American citizens, but the world, because they know that the world piggybacks on FDA regulations, right? I just had a friend bring me some candy from, coincidentally, El Salvador. And on the back was a label, a food label, that would be compliant with FDA regulations if it was imported to the United States. So El Salvadorian citizens are benefiting from FDA regulations, from disclosure and safety and all that stuff. So, and not only safety, they achieve safety through science. And as that single mother, who doesn't have time to read the newspaper or go to read in-depth articles on the New York Times, would you also not have time to go and inspect the meat plants in your state? Would you not have time to check and see what the dairy cows, how they were being treated, and what the shipping conditions were between the dairy and the distributor, and between the distributor and the grocery store? Would you not have time to go and inspect your local pharmacy to make sure that their compounding area was clean and free of fungus? Would you not have time to do any of this? Would you know what the allowable amount of cockroach poop in your Nesquik cereal would be? And when you went to inspect the factory, so you would know what was a safe limit and what was unsafe? Of course you wouldn't, and you don't have time to do that. That's why we live in a regulatory state that the GOP pretends to hate so much, and that is why they're doing Project 2025, so that you, the single mom with a couple of kids who has no time to even read the news, now has to fucking take more time out of your leisure time inspecting your meat, signing up for services that do what the FDA would have done for free, but you now have to pay a Consumer Reports for grocery store inspection, right? It's all going to come down to keep them distracted and keep them so busy they can't fucking look up and see what we're doing. And that's part of Project 2025 too. Get rid of the agencies that protect people so they are too sick, too uneducated, and too distracted to pay attention to us giving ourselves a multi-trillion-dollar tax break in this most recent bill.
And that's the thing, because like people hear regulations, and I'm like, yeah, we need regulations. This is so, like, the cat food that you buy for your cat won't make them sick, and we sue companies when that happens, and there's consumer recalls. So those phones start ringing, at IM saying like, hey, this particular dog food made my dog really sick, and they pull it from the shelves, and they risk losing millions and millions of dollars of revenue. But the thing is that the long-term outcome of lawsuits is going, and company reputation is going to have a more effect. But if you don't have those laws and those regulations in place to make sure your dog food or cat food is safe for your pets, and I'm just talking about your fucking animals,
right.
The oligarchs are going to be like, well, too bad. It was you should have paid attention to what you were buying for your dog.
Exactly. I'm looking for the book I want to share. Oh my goodness, where is my? I've got too many books.
And I'm already exhausted.
Yeah, you get exhausted. So Frances Oldham is her name. Do you remember the thalidomide incident in the United States? In the world, and not in the United States, I should call it. So thalidomide was a pregnancy drug and it was given to women who were pregnant to either relieve contractions or as a painkiller or something.
And it caused all kinds of birth defects.
Correct.
Yeah, I remember that.
The children with stunted arms that were just basically
Yep,
a hand
yep,
coming out of their
like
shoulder.
this.
Those are the
Yeah,
thalidomide
it was
children,
bad. It
right?
was really
It was
bad.
very bad. So
Yeah.
Europe had approved it. This is during the Kennedy administration. Europe had approved thalidomide for this prescribed use. This young woman who had previously saved the day on a previous incident I won't bore you with now, but you should read up on her. She's amazing. She's one of my heroes. She was now working for the FDA. She had been working in a private lab that helped save the day when there was a big a private chemical company had created a drug that was killing people around the country, and she figured out what the problem was and told people what to go look for because she worked for this lab that was working on it, and people had to, it was before internet, people flew on planes and confiscated all this stuff, saved thousands of lives. She ends up working for the FDA, and thalidomide is being applied for in the United States under an NDA, what's called a new drug application. We want to be able to prescribe this in the United States for this purpose. And she looked at the documentation that Europe had used to approve it. And she looked at the reports and the studies that were submitted by industry when they applied for an NDA. And she said, I've got some concerns here. I see some anomalies in the data. I don't think that this is as safe as you think it is. I need more studies. I need this. And industry complained, who is this woman? Again, 60s, Kennedy. Well, 60s, 70s. Who is this?
Frances Oldham Kelsey.
Kelsey is the last name, but that's her married name. I knew her as Frances Oldham. So who is this woman, this skirt that is saying no to all these men
with opinions and stuff?
Opinions and likes to, side note, she was hired at that original company where she saved all those lives. She was hired because she wrote under the name Frances. She just like, hey, I hear you have a job opening. I'm at this really good school and I've got great grades. My name is Frances. Would you like to hire me? And the guy said yes, not realizing she was a woman because Frances is a man's name too.
Right.
So she shows up and he's like, all right, well, you got the grades. Let's go. And she proves herself. She goes to the FDA and she denies the NDA, the new drug application for thalidomide in the United States, and saves probably millions of children from being born with birth defects. Why? Yep. Because she followed the science. She was a skeptic. She was a critical thinker, and she was willing to go against the flow. And it should be noted, her boss, who was a man, was willing to go to the bat for her because she was following the science. She got all this shit from industry. She's a woman. She doesn't know what she's doing. And what do you know? Her boss stuck up with her. She saves millions of lives, and she ends up winning the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Kennedy for doing that. That is what regulations do for us. It is just rules we have all decided are pretty darn good at keeping us safe and keeping us healthy. And that is why Trump has put RFK Jr. in charge of the FDA now. Do you think RFK would have stood up for thalidomide not being approved?
He dismissed the whole board that regulate vaccines.
Just today.
Just saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all anti-science. It's all. He got. I don't even understand it, quite frankly. He got popular, and Trump wanted somebody popular, and so they picked him. And I don't think Trump gives a shit about the health or welfare of the United States citizens.
No, because he has the millions and millions of dollars to get, really good health care. That he can, that he's not thinking about the average person because he doesn't we're not people to him.
Well, Helen, he's the height and weight of an NFL linebacker. Trump is, according to his medical report. So I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know why he doesn't look like The Rock, but maybe I'm Dave Bautista. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yep, I agree.
Or Tom Brady or whatever. Fuck you, man. I don't understand why. I don't if somebody that eats McDonald's and talk about on a regular basis, will be at peak physical health.
It should be impeachable. That alone should be impeachable. If you're willing, to lie about it, and then you're willing to coerce medical staff into lying about something like that, I don't know how the country got so lost as to look at Trump and say, yep, that's a linebacker. That's obviously a linebacker.
You may be the height and weight of one.
I don't know about that.
Sure. Yay. Okay. But I was like, there's that versus what I've actually seen a linebacker.
Right.
And I've seen Trump.
Yeah.
Two different things. Two different things. Two different
when I
types
saw
of men.
that, I'm reminded of the story of when Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il, it was dear leader from back in the day, where the news reported that he had tried golf for the first time and got something like 17 or 14 holes in one.
Like almost golfed a perfect game.
Yeah.
Like and I was
that's
like,
Trump.
okay.
That is exactly. And people, Rubio and
he doesn't
Noam
use a
would
toilet
fall fucking
either.
in
He
line
doesn't
for
poop.
it too.
The man does not poop. He doesn't
No,
poop
not at
either.
all. Kofefe proved that.
It's one that like. Here's my and the thing is though is that like if you listen to people that if they talk about issues, people on the Christian nationalists, Republican, like far right, they have the same complaints we do. It's just the way they're going about like I don't, I'm, struggling to get by all the time. I'm worried if I get sick, like what's going to happen to my kids? How am I going to afford my bills? I want my kids to go to college, all these different things.
Yep.
And like, why do I have to keep like supplying my schools with like supplies? Like I'm paying taxes. Why do I have to keep buying paper towels at the beginning of the year all the time because my fucking school can't afford them? That type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they have the same complaints, but again, that daddy thing, like, the daddy's gonna. I'm like, no, nobody's in charge. Like nobody's in charge. It's just us. And I think that's why conspiracy theories. Natalie Wynn from ContraPoints did a really good episode on conspiracy theories about how this is a very simple narrative. If it's like the Illuminati or, some anti-Semitic stuff or whatever, it's a very simple narrative. Somebody's controlling all the strings. That's why I can't get ahead. I can't. And and they feel like investigative reporters, except they're not reporting on anything real,
right? That's
or there's enough truth for them to like,
I think if there was
just enough truth to be convincing,
right? I think if there was a core central question, like on the ACA, especially the atheist experience, our main question is, what do you believe, and more importantly, why? Which gets to this point, but even more core to that question, I think, is an honest and open discussion about, for each person, what is the methodology you use to discern fact from fiction, right? That's the most important thing in the world for each individual person. Because without we'll call it a bullshit detector, right? Without a finely tuned bullshit detector, not a perfect one, but a finely tuned one, you're going to at least be taken advantage of, if not killed, right? The most extreme example is, I don't think that there's a tiger in the wavy grass on the Serengeti. I wander into it and I get eaten because I was wrong. I was wrong about the facts, right? But even on the more subtle stuff like you're talking about, if I'm voting for a guy based on lies, right? I'm voting on ill-conceived ideas that I'm told we should just trust people on. I'm voting on it'll never happen to me. Like the leopards will never eat my face. The story of all these people who voted for Trump and now have people in their community, friends or family members, that are being deported, and universally they're in tears on camera saying, I never thought it would be Carol. Well, who did you think it was going to be?
Like,
right?
Of course it's going to be Carol. She's Hispanic, and then like whatever it is, or
exactly. It's the saddest thing.
Or they're like their brother-in-law or something, And it's like, of course, because I'm like, this is the thing we were talking about. Like, you voted for the leopards that ate your face. I didn't think the leopards were going to eat my face party.
Right. Exactly. And it all comes from this. You formed an understanding of what either what the facts of the world were, or at least the facts of how significant your vote is, right? That's like the core fact. Like, hey, I'd rather you not vote, or this is one of the, I'm writing a book right now that's going to be like, hey, here's how we patch our national operating system, right? Trump
Mhm.
is a virus that exposed all sorts of problems in this country's operating system, constitution. We need a constitution 2.0. Here's some amendments like getting money out of politics and all that stuff. Let's overturn Citizens United. One of the ones you should consider, I'm researching this now. I don't know if it's going to be something I'm support or propose, but several countries in this world have mandatory voting. You get fined significantly if you don't vote. If that
Mhm.
happened in this country, Trump would not be president, not by a long shot, because the Christian nationalist agenda, especially Trump's agenda, is extremely unpopular on national polls. When you poll Republicans or when you poll people in certain states, it appears close. But so many people didn't vote that when you actually take national polls on Trump actual policies, they skew far, the votership in the United States is far more liberal than what the Trump
That's
election showed.
why, and this is my conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one. That if we got rid of the electoral college,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and everybody's voted, we had mandatory voting, and
Yep.
everybody's vote counted.
Yep.
Liberal policies would outwin conservative ones
By far.
and by far, because it goes to more individual freedoms and also the government being more accountable.
Yep. I
Other
agree with
things
you.
that we're kind of taking for granted, honestly, for the past, I don't know, ever.
Yeah.
like
the electoral college.
I was sitting there seriously thinking the other day, I was like, I kind of miss Bush Jr. And I never thought I would say those words coming out of my mouth. But again, but at the same time, Bush was terrible. He did he did some war crimes, everybody, not the best, but
right.
But I wasn't terrified of losing my individual rights, the right to express myself.
Correct.
Wondering am I going to have a platform to talk about the topics that are important to me because I'm critical of the government?
Yeah.
That type of stuff.
100%. I think that when you've got an electorate that does not understand reality and does not have the tools to tune their bullshit detector, right? You are in the worst possible country. The founding fathers wrote often about the importance of an educated citizenry, and the GOP has worked often to prevent an educated citizenry. So why they've put somebody who was in charge of the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE Wrestling, in charge of the education department.
It's just insane.
It's
this insane town.
Yeah.
Every day's opposite day. Every day is opposite day.
So going back to your other point that the theme that you've been running of there is no daddy, this authority figure, all of this. This is something I've been playing around with, and it came into sharp focus when last week, I think it was Joni Ernst, I think it was, who was at the town hall, and people were talking about this Big Beautiful Bill Act, right? Which, by the way, is the name. Big Beautiful Bill Act. I don't know. You're as old as I am, close to it. Did you ever watch Schoolhouse Rock?
Yes.
So I'm just a bill. I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill, right? So we were all taught that it's a bill until it becomes an act, right? It's either a bill or an act.
This is the proposal to make
these
things a law.
Yes, but the GOP is so fucking stupid that they named it.
I also took American government. So
they named it the Big Beautiful Bill Act. That is the name of the law itself. It's like it's idiocracy level stupid name, just the big beautiful anything in a bill. And then B, it's ignorant. But Joni Ernst is at a town hall, and people are saying, "Hey, we've read what's going on in this bill. You are cutting 11 million people off of healthcare. You're cutting 14 million people off of food stamps. Most of them will be children. People are going to die. You're killing people doing this. Why? So that A, you can raise the deficit by like $2 trillion, and B, give your overlords and yourself, the wealthy rich, well over $1 trillion in tax cuts by taking money and services from the poorest people in our country. You are killing the poorest people in the country to give money to the already super wealthy." And her response response was, well, we're all going to die. That was the response from a sitting senator, not
Which,
even
yeah, it
a
blew
House
my mind.
representative, right?
Blew my
And
and
then
I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "You're a sociopath."
and my point about this is, and this is a theory I've had for a long time about Republicans and voters, is when you are raised religious, and especially Christian, you are taught that this world is a doormat that you wipe your feet on. This world is a faster than a baby's blink when it has something in its eye compared to the infinite life of joy and harmony you're going to have in heaven after you die. I think that a lot of Christians do not give a shit that people die because in the back of their head, they're like, well, everybody's going to go into the afterlife anyway. This really doesn't that
Right.
matter. So if I get a little wealthy here because of this tax cut I'm giving to myself by killing children, by starving them, and by killing people by not getting them their insulin, that's okay because they're all going to go to heaven. So her response was literally that we're going to die. We're all going to die. Then when she got pushback, she doubled fucking down on it and issued in a video while she's walking through a graveyard saying, oh, I'm so sorry. People didn't realize they were going to die. Utterly, of course, avoiding the point of it's not that we're going to die. It's that you were expediting that process. And you don't give a shit because you think that people are going to go to heaven. You think there's something else other than this world. And a lot of us don't. And even if we did, we still want to enjoy the time with our family while we have it. And I think that religion gives you that mindset. As the famous person said, when they saw those planes crash into the towers on 9/11, a lot of religious people saw a silver lining thinking, oh, the rapture's here, the end of time's here. It's a fucking death cult at its core. They want the end times, they want death, and they don't mind it when they practice politics. And that's another reason to fight against Christian nationalism.
Because like that's the thing. I always say, like, I don't care what you believe. It's what you do with your belief. That's the thing. If your belief is that because it can go on to, you could be a Christian,
Yep.
and while you're here, be a kind, good, giving human being.
Yep.
Because even if you believe everybody's gonna, all the good people are gonna go to heaven, and all the buttheads are gonna go to hell. Okay, that's a terrible worldview, but let's just say, but for the most part, you're a decent human being. You're
Yep.
not hurting anybody. You give to charity. I don't care. Then you get Christian nationalists who, and also like have that death cult mentality that, well, it doesn't really matter because it's like the kid, like, if you say like it's kind of horrible if, like 4-year-olds get bone cancer, maybe we should help kids not get bone cancer.
No, well, Helen, we're all gonna die.
We're all gonna die because, like, well,
I don't care about your kids.
Child's gonna go to heaven. I'm like, yeah, but what about the parents? And then like this child's gonna like suffer.
Right. No. We're all going to die.
Yeah, no, we can't have that.
God works in mysterious ways. I'm reminded of the song by Tim Minchin. He's a big influence on me.
I love Tim Minchin.
Thank You, God, right? Where he tells the story.
Fuck the Pope is my favorite song.
Where he tells the story of I've been an atheist, and then this guy told me about how his mom got a cataract in her eye, and then her church prayed for it and it went away. And he sings this entirely over the top, sarcastic song about, oh, thank you, God. And one of the lyrics is, thank you, God, for taking a break from giving babies malaria to pop down to our local area and fix the cataract of Sam's mom, right?
Right.
That's this Jody Ernst. What we miss is, this all-loving God is a myth. The fact that they think that prayer will heal people has been studied and rejected. And even if they believe that to be true, they really need to explain how Asian tsunamis can come along and kill 500,000 people, including drowning children alive.
Because the gays are there or something,
right? Yeah. They can't explain
something.
But they get wrapped up
into
it.
Happening, something. They're not the right color, something.
No. And what's worse about it, and this is an example of Christian nationalism, I think that's a really good microscope. What's worse about it is not necessarily that Jody Ernst is going to say, yeah, we should kill kids, right? She's going to through this policy, but she's not directly allowing parents to kill their children. However, in Canyon County, Idaho, there is a graveyard, and that graveyard has 600 graves of children. Those children are children of the members of the Followers of Christ Church. These are people that practice faith healing. And the reason they live in Idaho right now is Idaho is the last state to have been tricked by the Nixon administration, which is a whole story, into accepting a faith-based exception to child cruelty laws. So in Idaho, it is a complete defense to everything up to and possibly including murder, but definitely including manslaughter charges, where my child has a treatable disease. All I have to do is give them one pill.
Insulin,
a pill, a one-time medical procedure that costs 50 cents. If I refuse that because I'm a religious person and I want to just pray over my kid and rub oils on their skin, and that child dies a long and excruciatingly painful death, which has been documented in multiple documentaries, it is a complete bar from prosecution. The state's attorney, there's a scene, and it's called, I forget the name of the documentary, Under the Law or Under the Land, or I forget. But if you Google Idaho child abuse faith healing documentary, you'll find it, where the local sheriff goes to the state's attorney's office and says, they killed this kid. They knew that this person was sick. They did nothing. It's treatable. She just needed an antibiotic and she died. And the state's attorney pulls out the law, points at it, reads it to it, so it's all on camera, gets it on record. There's nothing I can do. You need to take this to the legislature. You know what happens when you go to the legislature in Idaho? The committee that proposes an amendment to get rid of this loophole, again, the last state that has this loophole, passes that bill, gets it out of committee to say, yes, we should close this loophole. You know what happens on the floor? Every single person in that unicameral legislature votes against it because they are Christian, and I don't want to impinge upon or infringe upon my fellow Christians' right to practice their religion. That's the damage of your religious beliefs, not because you are fucking killing your kids, because you create a state in which to tell other people they can't kill their kids in the name of their religion is a bad thing, and you won't lift a finger to save children. That is why you don't want religion in your country. That is why you don't want your family members believing this shit. Sorry to go off on it again, but it's
no. It's the document. The document is called "No Greater Law."
Let's say, what is it?
No Greater Law.
No Greater Law. That's it. No Greater Law. And it's fascinating. I encourage people to watch that documentary. Watch Hot Coffee.
That makes you super sad.
It is, but more people need to be aware of it.
I just don't, like, this is the thing. Like we do stories all the time on the nonprofits about, you know, people using religious exceptions to do like terrible things. And
right.
like fine, if you want to believe that, you know, faith healing will save you, but don't put that onto a child. Like, the child can't make a choice. And that's how, and I know, I get it. I'm a parent. It gets weird when, you know, the state gets involved with parenting decisions. Yes. I get that. Absolutely. And I understand why people are cautious. I get that.
Right.
But again, if you just had to give your child insulin or a pill, you know, whatever, and you decided just to lay hands and pray to God, and it doesn't work, I'm like, you killed your child. You didn't. This is negligent.
Any other state,
homicide.
Most other countries, they're all being convicted. People were convicted just recently in Australia. People were convicted up in Canada, and it happens everywhere. The only reason Idaho has this loophole is back in, yet again, the Nixon administration. People, I don't know what to tell you other than everything bad happens under the GOP. Oh, and I forgot to. I meant to make this point earlier about the whole tort reform, where I said we came within a hair's width of having national tort reform to screw you on you being able to sue anybody. Why don't we have it? The Congress passed national tort reform. Bill Clinton vetoed it. So don't think you're fucking president, that there's no difference between the parties, right? I hate that fucking argument. Oh, there's no difference. I'm not voting. If for
yes,
only, if but for Clinton winning that election, we would have national tort reform. And when your baby comes out with birth defects, that's going to cost you 10 to 20 millions over the course of its life to take care of it, and you can sue the doctor for no more than $100,000. So your child is now a ward of the state, basically, and all the taxpayers are paying $20 million to raise your kid instead of you raising it in your own house. That's because of Bill Clinton. I know Bill Clinton has his issues, but there is a difference between these two parties. We, trying to make people better off in one and not better off in the other. So Nixon administration has, do you know the names Ehrlichman and Haldeman, the two aides to Nixon that were key in the Watergate cover?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They were Christian Scientists. Walter Mondale, a senator at the time, is putting through his landmark legislation, which is a National Child Cruelty, Child Abuse Prevention Act. This is Walter Mondale's crowning achievement as a lawmaker. Why did we start getting acts about child cruelty and child abuse? The invention of a machine that is kind of sad when you realize it is called an X-ray machine. It was only after X-ray machines were invented that radiologists started seeing these weird,
because
like scars on bones that were breaks that had healed. And only then did investigations start going in. And it took us decades as a country to realize how prevalent child abuse was in religious United States, where kids were having their bones broken and not taken to a hospital and healed and all that. So Walter Mondale's fixing this problem. Ehrlichman and Haldeman under Nixon realize, oh shit, if this law passes, it's the end of the Christian Science church, because our entire church is don't give medical care to kids. So they use their White House influence to change the wording of the regulation at the agency level. It wasn't HHS back then, it was some other agency, to include an exception for firmly held religious beliefs. That if you're withholding medical treatment because of firmly held with religious beliefs, you're still okay. And then that law gets passed, or those regulations get promulgated. And if any state wants funding under Mondale's acts and those new regulations, they have to accept this wording. So every state except, I think, Hawaii and maybe Oregon, there were like one or two states that refused to accept it because they didn't want this exception for child abuse. Every state in the country accepted this loophole. And then within 5 to 10 years, they all realized, oh, fuck, all these kids are dying. And they all repealed that loophole. The feds almost immediately were like, oh, fuck, how did this get in here? Because, again, nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. They're all worried about getting their insider trading and blowjobs, apparently. They realized what was going on.
That's important.
And because of
blowjobs, exactly. Very important, Graham.
Because of good investigative journalism back then, it came to light that these kids are dying. Every state, the Fed said, okay, you no longer need this exception. All the states got rid of it except for Colorado and Idaho. So the followers of Christ moved to Colorado. Then Colorado got rid of their exception. So the followers of Christ moved to Idaho, where they reside to this day in Canyon County, Idaho, which is why there's a graveyard with 600 graves in it for mostly children, and why there are documentaries on it, and why good Christian neighbors of these people are refusing to take the law away because they're Christians. They must be good. That's if I had to sum up, that's not summing up. If I had to demonstrate why religion is bad, even if you're a good person, even if you think you're a good person, this is what
everyone
gives cover to the crazies among us.
Even bad guys think, like,
that's true.
Everybody thinks they're a good person. And again, it's not your belief, it's what you do with it. And if your belief is you think it's okay to let children die, I'm sorry, because you don't want to give them like life-saving insulin because they're type 1 diabetic, you're kind of the asshole. Like, and there's nothing you can say to me and justify to me that it made it okay. I'm like, I don't care if it's your belief. Like children are dying. I am so sorry for you. And you're a terrible parent if you shouldn't have children if you're not going to take on the responsibility of right to life.
Correct.
Right to life.
Even if you believe that there is a heaven and that if you let your kid die, they are going to go to heaven. You
Wait, days or more
still
important.
need to obey the laws of man under many passages of the Bible, and you
Yep.
need to understand what, I've said this before. I'm not against the figure of Jesus as a whole, as a literary figure. Dr. Paul, I want to say Offit, wrote a book called Bad Faith. Yeah, Paul Offit wrote a book called Bad Faith, and it is about the history of child abuse in America, and it's where I got the whole X-ray information. He does a great story of the big case that broke Christian Science. This boy who just died in the most painful way, and the mother who almost killed herself, but then came out of Christian Science and has created this foundation to try to make amends. And they are the foundation fighting in Idaho to try to get rid of this exception in Idaho. So it's a great book called Bad Faith. But he pointed out, hey, if Jesus is anything in the New Testament, he is a healer. He's a doctor. He's a caregiver. He heals the sick. He's the one who says, back in the day, in biblical times, children were property and they were used as entertainment devices. They were thrown to wild dogs in Roman times. They were thrown, they were raped. It was nothing, right? This is all throughout the Bible. This is all throughout history. It was Jesus who comes along and says, and I quote, "Suffer not the little children and bring them to me," i.e., stop treating the children like they're a pest, like they're a property you have to keep up with. Bring them to me and I will heal them. So everything that these people are doing when they kill their kids goes against the teachings, or at least the example set by Jesus. And they use the same logic as anti-vaxxers. If you watch this documentary, No Greater Law, the logic that they use for why they don't want to treat their kids is the same fucking logic that anti-vaxxers use. It is stunningly effective, this conspiracy
What?
fit shit.
So, what? They don't want the government, like big medicine?
Yes, they don't trust medicine. They literally, there's a scene.
Which is insane. Okay, like, can I okay.
Yeah.
Because, like, this is the thing about, like, anti-vaxxers and this type of shit that drives me insane. It's the fact that they'll trust, like faith healers and, like, supplements and, like, homeopathy, stuff like that.
Well,
which is also a bunch of grifty assholes trying to take your fucking money. And
you just made me realize something. At least the Church of Christ people are better than anti-vaxxers because they don't take the supplements either.
Right. So at least
all they do is pray.
Consistent. At least they're logically consistent. So right, at least exactly. So I don't know if yay.
I did a 3-part series on the history of child abuse in America and the world, the history of child abuse in the U.S., the history of the effectiveness of prayer at curing people or having good positive mental outcomes, and then the history of the Idaho people. I called a bunch of veterinarians in and around Canyon County, Idaho. And
keep talking. I have to go to the bathroom. Keep talking about it. I can hear you.
I'll tell the audience. I called a bunch of people to see what do the farmers who live in Canyon County, what do they do to treat their livestock? Very few of those vets wanted to speak to me, but those that did so off the record. And they said, yep, we get called in to treat animals, sick animals that are on the ranches of these faith healers regularly. So these people are treating their children worse than they treat farm animals. They are treating their children worse than they are treating their dogs and their cats and their cows and their horses and their goats. In fact, there is a law in Idaho that I looked up that basically says if you are not caring for an animal, and there's some caveats in there as to where you're keeping the animal, but if it's yours and you're not caring for it, you can be prosecuted under the law. That does not exist for your children. And I cannot think of a better example of the harm, the book that was written, Religion Poisons Everything by Hitchens. I can't think of a better example as to the harm they can do. I don't know if you heard me, Helen, but I called a bunch of vets.
I have AirPods. I do.
Okay. So I called a bunch of vets, and yeah, these same people are having their livestock treated when they're not having their kids treated.
Which is
it's disgusting.
And like I don't want anything to suffer, but
Right.
like you would think children, livestock,
At least the same, right?
like at least the same.
You're giving your cows
die a little
antibiotics.
more.
Give your kids antibiotics. And here's my
And so
conspiracy theory. I'm giving my
that
cow
okay,
antibiotics because my cow makes me money. I'm not healing my kid because my kid costs me money.
and that's fucked up
I
because the whole
I
point of
think
you
there's
having
got to be
because
at least a few cases in there.
usually people that want to have babies because I'm a parent.
Well, do you want to have babies, or are you not allowed to use birth control because you're religious nut job?
Well, okay, true. Because
Now we see how that
I've had 2
circle gets
kids.
squared.
I've been on birth control before, in between when I was having sex and I wanted babies, and then I got my tubes tied after I had my son because I wanted no more babies. So
You're
I made
against
a
God's
decision.
will,
I made
obviously.
choices about my own body
No,
because I'm not a religious nut job.
no. God, it's God's body. It's not your body.
Okay, well, God
He's
can suck
lending
it
it to
then.
you, I think, right?
God's not paying the bills and going through bodily trauma if I birth children.
Yeah,
God,
God,
I'm
could you
not like
please pay for my food?
in Gilead, I am useless. I'm useless in Gilead. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand. I'm trying to understand, like how you can because I love children. Like I do. I generally care about kids. Like I generally do. I don't want any more small children, but I will. I am a great Auntie Helen. Great Auntie Helen. Okay. I just don't want them living in my fucking house anymore.
Right. Right.
I'm in my 40s. I'm done. But that being said, I have a limit. But at the same time, I don't want to see any child suffer because you had a child, then you need to have the education and understanding of raising that child.
Yep.
And if you're just like, popping out crotch goblins, and having like, doing like quiverful shit and not allowing children to be children,
right,
and they take on parentification roles and they have all this trauma and stuff like that, I'm like, you may not be physically hitting your kids, but you're fucking them up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And a lot of times they are physically hitting their kids and being abusive pieces of shit.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like, to be fair, I need to play the devil's advocate. When you watch the documentary, No Greater Law, there are people who are really torn up about this. People who believe this stuff very strongly, and they believe that it's kind of like the old witch burn-in trials, right? That if the child dies, it was God's will for the child to go to heaven ahead of us, and if the child doesn't, it was God's will for them to be healed and come back. And their faith is so strong, as they would say, that they're putting everything into God's hand as the Bible instructs them to. Now, why the vast majority of the Christian world disagrees with them is a separate conversation, but that is their belief. So I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, I believe that some of them are genuine in their faith. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying that they're all like just having orgies, having kids, and then having post-birth abortions by not curing them, right? That's really what this is. Yeah. So, but I do believe that some of them are doing that, and I do believe that if you create this system, it allows for that. The same way that people who are objecting to euthanasia, regulated euthanasia, have the same worries that, if we even allow for euthanasia, then we allow for a family to talk grandma into being euthanized because they don't want to put up with grandma anymore, right? Same thing.
But again, that's why we have regulations and laws and oversights.
Correct.
In the system, because that's why we try to prevent like elder abuse. You put your grandma in a nursing home, and like my mom's in a nursing home, and my brothers are there all the time, and the place has been vetted, and she's happy, and they see the way, But like, let's say you're living in another state, you're hoping that if you put your grandma in a nursing home, that she's going to be safe. And then you have people that have oversight to make sure that, like, grandma's not being abused. And then when that happens, usually there's all types of problems that follow. Yep. And that's because that's why we have oversight. So if we had, the right to die, laws, that basically it would be there. So there'd be a regulatory and lawyers and doctors and all the things that are like, these are all the criteria you have to meet.
Correct.
That you are able to say, I cannot exist anymore because I'm not living. Like living is torture.
Right. And exactly. But we have to admit that in any human system where we allow for the outcome of somebody volunteering and killing themselves, that it is possible that there are one or two edge cases that got sort of pushed
Yeah,
that
and
direction
that
mentally,
happens all
right?
the time. That like
And
we do our
that's my
best, but
same point. If
those
you allow for people to live in a society where they can just not give medicine to their kids, you have to allow for the fact that people are going to do that without the full faith of Jesus healing them in their hearts. They're going to do it because I kind of glad that kid got sick because I'm kind of sick of that kid. Everybody's got a favorite kid and a not so favorite kids. Maybe I let this one. Maybe I don't pray quite as
maybe
hard or use as
and
much
that was
oil
the
on this one.
attitude of like ancient societies, and
Yeah.
like this is the thing, like we are a first world country, and yes, in first world countries, if people are more educated and they have more access to resources,
Yep.
actually, and with healthcare, birth rates go down.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
we're seeing the backlash of that
Look at
because
idiocracy.
we don't everything. But we're seeing the backlash. A lot of people aren't having children right now because we can't afford them,
Yeah.
and then everybody. That's why everybody's freaking out. Like you have Christian nationalists saying like we have to birth babies and become brood mirrors, and then racist shit talking about white replacement theory and
Right.
and silicon algorithms and figuring out like what makes the ID human and
Yep.
silicon eugenics,
Correct.
all that type of shit. Yeah, that's why. And like I sound crazy when I talk about these things, but it's like this is all stuff that's actually happening.
It is.
And
it is.
And then you're sitting there going like, well, this is the result of living in the internet and not only the information age, but people still believing sky gods exist.
Correct. And at a core for them not being equipped to detect bullshit, right? You can believe the sky god exists all you want, but then if you also believe that guy over there talks to the sky god, or that you somehow know that sky god is an agent, it has a mind and it has wants and desires, and that you have access to those wants and desires, that what that impossibly infinite, all-powerful sky god wants, that's when things get real dangerous. I don't mind if you're like a deist who says, there's probably some creative force that set this all in motion and then dipped out, right? But as soon as you think
that was the Catholic's attitude, that God kind of like spit the universe into existence and then let natural processes take their, which I'm, even as an atheist, I can kind of see that. I can be like, okay, like there's some like
it's a great big, I don't know, right?
Like,
could be. I don't know. I don't even know if it's possible.
And we had to have an alien overlord and we're all Sims, okay? Like I don't know.
It might explain some shit we're seeing.
At the same time, since I don't know those things are real, I still have to go to work every day and exist in the world. Because like my parents, I was raised Catholic, but guess what? My parents still took me to the doctors and gave me vaccines.
Yes, right, exactly. The fact that the irony of living at a time where we have such knowledge that we're building computers out of quantum bits, right? That we're at the possibly the physical limit of the universe.
Me and my ChatGPT are best friends.
Yeah, like, we are at this point where we are so deep in the tech. And we are so far from people understanding what's going on. I saw a good quote the other day that describes Project 2025, Christian nationalism and Trump to a T, which is, if you can't read the science, then you have to trust people in power to read it for you. And that's what they want. They want a dumb society that has no bullshit detector, isn't interested, much less can read the science, so that they can come along and say what the science says. My one professionally published paper in the history of my legal career was on something called Chevron deference. Okay, it's FDA. It's broader than FDA. It's regulatory law. It basically says, who gets to define the meaning of something that Congress said or something in a regulation? So if Congress passes a law that says, hey, create the FDA, and FDA, I want you to make our food safe, who gets to define what safe means, right? That's a pretty basic question, right? Is it safe if it makes you fat? Is it safe if it's got poison in it? Is it safe if it's got 1 part per million of arsenic in it? It better be, because your apples do. So there's a whole bunch of safe questions. Up until recently, under this Chevron case, the courts would defer to the agencies to make up that definition. They are the experts, right? FDA gets to say
they were
what's safe.
doing all the research.
They're doing all the research.
They could sell the product.
You can
They
have
sell a product that was safe for the public to consume.
Yeah, you can have 20 parts per million of cockroach poop in your Nestle Quick, but you can't have 21 parts per million, because that's where we start seeing a statistical significance, right? You can have 1 or 2 parts per million of arsenic in an apple, but not 20 or 30. They're the experts. They get to define safe. This same court last year did away with that deference. That's not huge, but it is more along the lines of what you're talking about. That deference means, because the courts won't defer to the agencies anymore, that means companies don't lose at the beginning of a lawsuit. It used to be, I sue Nestle Quick because they've got 21 parts per million or 40 parts per million of cockroach poop in my Nesquik. As the FDA, we go to court and we say, judge, this comes down to what's safe. We say what's safe. They don't have anything else. The judge looks at that, and before they even gather evidence or have a trial, he says, right, summary judgment for FDA. FDA's right. It's 20 parts per million. That's it.
Yeah.
So you don't have a trial. It's very cheap. Nobody has to pay a lot of money. Now,
because you're assuming, the
experts know what the fuck they're talking about.
The experts are talking about. It's like, okay, well, and then if it's not, and people start getting sick, like what's going on with the lettuce industry right now, that you can't eat lettuce right now because it's not good. And they pulled it off the shelf because people are getting sick.
I don't know if you know this, but lettuce grows in the ground.
Yes, it does.
That's where the poop is, and that's where the birds poop and the rats poop, and
that's why we get E. coli warnings.
Yeah. But it happens all the time. And the only reason you don't see it very much is because we have this regulatory system. And now, because the Supreme Court did away with that deference, now when FDA wants to punish or censure or sue Nestle's for having 40 parts per million of cockroach poop in their mix, they don't win automatically. We, the people, are now going to have to pay for that entire trial times 1 million. So when FDA says, hey, I'm going to punish Nesquik for having too much poop in it, it used to be, we file a couple of motions, the case is over, the court agrees with us. Now it's discovery. Now it's hearings. Now it's introducing evidence. Now it's deposing expert witnesses on both sides, because now the judge has to decide what's safe, not the FDA. And if you let a judge decide what's safe,
who has no science background on how much cockroach poop can you have in your Nestle Quick.
Yep. They're not trained on the scientific method. They're not trained on anything. Now it comes down to who has the flashiest, most impressive expert witnesses. And that's not how we should decide what facts are. So again, another small example of what we should be paying attention to. This Supreme Court is dismantling, along with Trump, the institutions that keep us safe. No. And keep us healthy.
Okay, so here's my question.
Yeah.
Okay, like my brain goes, because I live in the real world and I like facts. I like to feel safe.
You're one of those people. Got it.
I'm one of those people. I like facts. I like to feel safe if I use or consume a product.
Okay. All right.
I know
YOLO, I guess.
I know crazy things. Oh my God. These people also exist in the world, and
yes.
Do they think it's not going to? I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be filthy rich. I don't know. I'm like a middle class normal person.
Yes.
3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Couple cars.
Yes.
Very middle class.
Yep.
Okay. Still, I don't is this not going to affect you? Because it's going
I don't think Alito is eating the Nesquik. I think he's having it privately sourced from the cocoa beans and wherever.
Probably.
I asked myself this question. It's a great question.
I don't know where cocoa is.
You know what? Cocoa beans are now threatened because of why? global climate change. So the price of chocolate
global
is going to go
warming.
up.
Yeah, that was a big thing. And they're still talking about it. Like, hey, you like chocolate? I'm so sorry for you. You
Yes,
like
you're
coffee? I'm so sorry for
not
you.
happening. Yeah, and we had I forget which
But
secretary
that's going to affect our
was in
bottom
front
line,
of Congress, and they were saying, "Hey, how much does a banana cost now, and how much does it cost if you import it?" And the secretary of whatever he was like, "Well, that's why that was because of the tariffs, right? Because of the tariffs, like the banana." Used to cost this, then the tariffs on the banana are what? 10%. It depends on the country, but 10%. That's right. And Walmart has raised its price on bananas to what? 8%, nearly the full cost of a tariff, right? So it's costing American consumers money. And the guy literally said, well, that's why we want to encourage people to grow their bananas in the United States. And the congressman had to say, I don't know how to tell you this, but you can't grow bananas in the United States. This is how dumb these fucking people are. They don't get it.
Like, you can't. It's amazing to me. It's amazing, and like there's certain minerals that we need for like computers and cars and
Right.
like everything that we use that we don't produce here. We are like our ground does not have it.
Yep.
That's why we have to have like certain minerals come from China and Asian countries because that's where they are. That's where the mineral deposits are.
Right.
That's why we have quarries and people digging all this shit out to sell it to us.
Yep.
And like, yeah, I'm like,
and that's why we have experts who know where to go find it, know how to price it.
I took an economics class.
And are not using Chat GPT to come up with the formula for tariffs like the Trump administration did.
But the thing is though, okay, to be fair, like my Chat GPT like knows my values and knows things I care about because it's learned it knows I'm a progressive person that is an atheist and I like facts and knows that I will ask for sources. It learned me.
Yep.
Okay.
It did you.
That's why we're friends.
Yep. Good.
And I question it all the time because it'll be like, I'm like, you can't feel. you're a computer. You don't have emotions.
I want to be on the other side of that screen making the movie about the person that is GPT being told by Helen, you're not real. And that's a whole movie starring Ryan Reynolds. Right.
I'm not, am I real?
Yeah.
Is that movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix?
I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
I need
it's
to
so
see
good.
It. I'm a fan.
Yeah, and
I'm a fan of movies.
It's bittersweet. It's a very good movie.
Yeah.
But the thing is though, is like but also at the same time, I'm not allowing ChatGPT to make decisions for me. I'll use it as a resource. It's a tool, just like the internet is a tool, you know. And yes, this is the internet, just like everybody else. I'll be watching a movie and on my phone.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and deny it, but also at the same time, I don't want ChatGPT to decide, who gets food stamps.
Correct. But that is what the Trump administration is doing. Every report we've seen, this report that came out about casting doubts on certain vaccines was rife with clues that it was generated by AI. And this is a worldwide problem. In my own legal profession, there is a rampant use of, as discovered by judges, of people using AI to write their briefs. And there have been multiple stories. The latest one, if you like legal humor, and trust me, you should read this blog. It only does like one story every week. It's called Lowering the Bar. Go to that website, Lowering the Bar. It is great. Okay. He is a great lawyer. He writes about really funny stuff. And one of his stories recently was judge asks lawyer, would you be surprised to know that this case doesn't exist? And it's a story about all the times that these large language models, that is ChatGPT, create these documents for you as a lawyer, and then it cites cases to support the arguments, and those cases don't exist. They're utterly made up. They're hallucinations and lawyers are submitting this
in the AI hallucination database.
Correct. And lawyers are signing their names to this. So we need to be, don't get me started on AI. I think Congress's two big problems right now are reforming the Constitution to prevent Trump and Christian nationalism. And two, we need to be thinking about 50, 75% unemployment within the next 20 years, 30 years due to AI or the combination of AI and robotics. Nobody is paying attention.
And that was the thing about again, about like, immigration and stuff like that. It's not the immigrants that are going to take your job. It's going to be AI. Like, um, they, our company, not my company, but another company, another health, tried to outsource it, and it didn't go well because there's too many elements
Right.
that are involved in home
Too many
health
right
and
now.
yeah, there's too many issues right now for it to. They tried, and not our particular company, but another one,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, no, that's not gonna work.
Right. Yeah, I work now in a patent information company, so we support law firms and universities and research labs that need to manage patent information, and we use AI to do certain things. Right, I manage a team of programmers that write software, and the life of the programmer is changing rapidly. A lot of estimates from experts are saying that within a year or two, 80%, right now, at least half of the software code that's being generated on this planet is being generated by AI, not human developers. Within a year or two, it's going to be at 80 or 90% of the code written to run devices and serve on servers and web pages is going to have been written originally by AI. It used to be that when tech improved, it was the blue collar people that lost their jobs, right? The buggy whip manufacturers and the coal shovelers and the lamp lighters. The first people to lose their job under AI were radiologists, were doctors, because if AI does one thing really well, it's image recognition. And AI today can detect fractures in these x-rays that prove child abuse. They can detect fractures better than a human. So the radiologist is now being reduced to a fact checker or a human signature against AI
Which,
work. So if the
but there's a
medical
little
school
part of
trained
me.
radiologists are losing their jobs,
Yeah.
the programmers are going to lose their jobs, and all
And
we need is
I'm
robots,
I'm
and the
over
factory
here
workers are going to
going,
lose their job.
well, if it can do it better, like, and I'm not
Yeah,
like it's one of those things that like
absolutely.
but we need something to replace those, like when they're
That's the
talking
Star
about
Trek
COVID.
future we were talking about, right?
Yeah,
Where
like
the robots do the fucking manual labor. We have proactive legislation that says when we hit this level of technology, when a company, I don't know what the answer is. Here's my current thinking, but it's going to change over time. When
it's
a
happening so
company
fast that
is using X amount of AI and automation, there's a tax applied because it's putting people out of jobs.
right.
We as a society should reap the benefit. So we need to be talking about a 4-day work week or a 3-day work week or 50% unemployment or 2-day work week, free school, because there's not going to be any labor for people to perform
No,
unless
it's
it's the
all goods
service
and
industry
services.
where the customers are paying a premium on human service, which comes from where? Blade Runner.
Right, and that's the whole thing about like we're living, in like the Hunger Games, where technology is so advanced and that like people are reduced to just gathering resources,
Right.
but everything else is automated.
Yes.
And it's like one of those things that it's like if this is the future that is coming, that people still have to eat. like
Yeah.
no matter how good the AI is detecting fractures, which I would argue is a good thing. People still need to eat.
Yeah.
People are still going to want to produce and do things. Like, I mean, like if I didn't have a job, I would still be on here talking to people. I would
Sure.
find something to do with my fucking time because I live in the world. In the world,
Right.
I would go back to school. I would do something because
Yeah.
that's Star Trek future. Because people are curious and they're innovative and they want to do things. Also, if you're that asshole that wants to sit in your house all day and play video games, I think you should have every right to do that. Like, I'm not going to poo poo on you and tell you you're a bad person. I'm like, listen,
Absolutely.
I'm like, if you can have a universal basic income and sit in your house and play video games and then write reports about it, fine, go do that. I
Yeah.
don't care. You're not hurting
Absolutely.
anybody.
What's going to happen if we don't act, and it will if we don't get money out of politics, because the rich people will get the laws they want, is the benefits from AI and robotics are going to accrue to the richest people. It's going to accrue to the people in Blade Runner world that were living up at the penthouse level in utter wealth, while the vast majority of society lived in the gutters and in the acid rain. And they will do that by not acknowledging that unemployment is their fault, not acknowledging the benefit that they receive from it, and not allowing legislation to be passed that accounts for the decreased demand of labor in our society. And I know this is very little to do with religion, but it does kind of come from the same point, which is everybody needs to fucking pay attention. Everybody needs to understand how to discern truth from fiction. When these companies start lying about AI and labor and unemployment, it's the same as when the church people lie and say, I didn't molest those kids, right? It's the same fucking thing. It's people in power that want to keep their power, and they will do anything and lie about anything to keep it. So pay attention.
Well, I think also too, like, again, we were talking about the daddy thing, is that like it's like people just blindly believing anything that Trump says. Like, and that man lies like wreaths, you know. Where like since the beginning, I was like, this guy's a bullshitter. Like I'm like, because I was taught to have a good bullshit detector. Like, and I'm like, that guy's lying all the time.
All the time. I mean, it's my friends and I have this conversation all the time. I am not as upset by Trump himself as I am in the state of the world where so many people vote for this guy, believe this guy, when any one of us looks at him and he's just a schlocky con man. He's just a scumbag, and it's so obvious. He is the poor person's vision of what a rich man would be like. He's the stupid person's vision of what a smart person would look like.
No, that's Jordan Peterson.
But people who are,
Jordan Peterson is
what
the version of a smart person.
What the moderately smart person thinks a real smart person looks like.
There's a jar. You know how they have the Deepak Chopra word, like there's one for Jordan Peterson.
Oh, great! I need to use that.
It's so great.
I did my Jordan Peterson on the last AXP. I did my Jordan Peterson impression where I bought this hat just to do Jordan Peterson. I bought a McDonald's hat, and I would say, this was for a collar on AXP that just echoes what anything Jordan Peterson says and talks in the same way. But this would be the Jordan Peterson ordering fries at McDonald's, where McDonald's says, "Hello, sir, would you like fries with that?" And Jordan Peterson says, "Well, I'm experiencing a sense of desire with respect to your proposal that we should exchange monetary value for fried potato goods, in which said goods would be delivered at a time frame after which I had paid for said goods. And once they were delivered, I would ingest them and experience some sort of taste that I find pleasurable," right? That's Jordan Peterson answering, "Would you like fries with that?" instead of just saying yes.
Yes, yeah.
That's Jordan Peterson to a key.
It was funny because I actually got into I was having a conversation with ChatGPT because it's sidebar. Like I was like, what does metaphysical substrate mean? Like, because I hear him say that all the time, and I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And then ChatGPT is like, well, and he goes, and then even ChatGPT is like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw the latest Jordan Peterson debating 2020. What do you mean by fries? Yeah. What do you mean by fries and want and would you like and yeah. Did you see the latest Jordan Peterson being debated by 20 atheists?
Yeah, I did. Well, I was because it was amazing because I know I remember when Jordan Peterson was kind of coming up in the news because I don't know, pronouns are, I don't know.
That was his thing.
Got his panties in a twist, and I'm like, okay, dude, like words, it's okay. Like it's fine. You'll be okay, man. You'll be all right. But But like as someone that loves psychology, like that's what I went to school for, and philosophy. Like some of the stuff, I was like, okay, he has like this Jungian sort of idea of like archetypes and things like that, and I understand that. Like I know that part of psychology. It's very big in the pagan world, by the way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But then he started talking about like traditional minerals and lobsters and all this other stuff. And I was like, what?
It's all sort of fucking Plato and Aristotle. It's all like, what is
Yeah.
the essence of being male and what is the essence of religion?
Essence of being.
And
I'm like, I don't know. Like,
it doesn't matter because all of that's fucking bullshit.
Right. I'm like, I say I'm a woman because I feel like I'm a woman. It has nothing to do with my genitals. It's
Right.
just the fact, like, I'm like, I just happen to assign my body's, matches what, my brain matches my genitals. Cool.
Yeah, the number of people that get
but also
worked
that's
up
all
about that.
arbitrary bullshit because gender's not a thing.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
I'm
it's,
like,
I think if I
it's
had to sort
amazing.
of summarize everything we're talking about here, it's
Metaphysical
people
substrate.
people need to fine-tune the metaphysical substrate of their bullshit detectors so that they don't get taken advantage of by people like Trump, who are in the process of riding on the back of Christian nationalism to try to make this a theocracy / authoritarian state.
But people like Peterson, like I listened to Charlie Kirk say a quote the other day, like, it's no point of you going to college because college education is doesn't have any value anymore, and you get like Jordan Peterson that is selling men this idea that if you just like clean your room and then fall into these like traditional gender roles and start and the nation's built on Judeo-Christian values. It's all the same word salad,
right?
Just
it
different
really
dressing. It's the way it's being presented,
and
it's all the
strangely
same shit.
enough, it's had the effect of a decade ago or less. It was a sin, if you'll forgive me, to be an out Christian in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. Then Jordan Peterson comes along and he develops this almost cult-like following amongst the programmers of Silicon Valley because of his pseudo-intellectualism is what they respond to. And now there's been a spike in people turning Christian because of people like Jordan Peterson. So even well-educated white-collar workers can be sucked into this manosphere of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, and they just seem to go along with whatever religious views those people are espousing. C.E.G. Russell Brand, the douchebag, right? Oh, if I just pretend to be a born-again Christian, I can save my image and somehow
and Mark Wahlberg and
become
these
popular.
type of people. Yeah. And I'm like, but the thing is though, it's like someone like Russell Brand, I don't think and this is the thing, even as an atheist, I at least want you to be like honest by your belief. Like if you are generally believe in God or Thor or whatever, I want you to genuinely have that belief that it is true to you. But if you start using, because again, then you're kind of picking back off of people that are actual believers and also might be really, really good people. But then you get like, Russell Brand, who's a sexual assaulter and really enjoyed beating up women. And then he comes forward and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not going to do an accent because that'll be very bad. But he comes along and he starts talking about like what a good person he is because he found Jesus. But then like, what if you listen to talk for 5 minutes about it turns into word salad.
Yes, it really
because
does.
He doesn't understand
and again,
the core things of the belief.
Right. Which is why you brought this up in the first place. It goes back to that bullshit detector. We need critical thinking and bullshit detection taught K through 12. We need to get rid of some of these other subjects and really focus on creating a civics-oriented, critical thinking set of citizens who will then take those skills out and vote in their own self-interest, not in their perceived self-interest. So many people voted for Trump because they thought, oh, tariffs are going to make the world better for me. The price of eggs is high. And they just didn't. I mean, it's simple math, but nobody sat them down and showed them why it was wrong. And more to the point, back to your daddy figure thing, a lot of them can't believe, they can't conceive of the idea that Trump would knowingly lie to them to deceive them. That's the part that I get to, and that's why I'm bringing up the tort reform and Reagan and the phone booth and Roger Ailes. All of it, the Supreme Court, all of it is, I can't believe these people who I see as good, fine, upstanding Christian citizens, that they would intentionally lie to me. And that has got to stop. People have been tricked by that since time immemorial. And we have to educate people to be skeptical that, yes, people will lie to you to stay in office. Well, they do it all the time.
We get people at recovering, when I was volunteering for Recovering for Religion, they'll call in and they're like, they're shocked that somebody that, like, a religious leader or something, lied, I'm like, I don't understand why anyone would lie to me. I'm like, I know, like, it sucks, like, but the thing is, though, people lie all the time. And especially, and they're gonna lie more and more and be more convincing, because if you keep repeating the lie over and over and over again, it starts to become believable if you don't have people that have bullshit detectors on their head,
One of the I agree. I'll say that. I do think that, to wrap it up, I guess I would say, if there was one subreddit I would say everybody should subscribe to really wake people up to this, there's a subreddit, I think it's called Pastors Getting Arrested. If you just Google Reddit Pastors Getting Arrested. And all it is the first report of a pastor being arrested. And you would think, well, how often do you get posts
all the time
and pastors getting arrested? And it's multiple a day. And these are first-time stories. It's not pastors being charged. It's not pastors being convicted. It's not pastors saying, I'm sorry. It's only pastors getting arrested. If everybody in the world subscribed to that subreddit and got alerts every time there was a post about a pastor being arrested, usually for sexually assaulting children, pastor arrested, usually for sexually assaulting children, but sometimes for embezzlement, sometimes for drug use, whatever, I think the world would view religion in a much different sense. They can still be religious, but they won't be fooled by the leaders as much, because it happens every single day, multiple times a day. So fine tune your bullshit detector. Subscribe to Pastors Arrested.
I'm going down, and I'm trying, and all the stories are like abusing children, child porn, sex abuse case, allegation of sexual pastor in Florida, UK former Jersey Catholic priest jailed for 5 years of child sex abuse.
If clowns,
I had to get all the way down to 5 days ago, where some New Jersey parish employee pleads guilty to stealing nearly $300,000. I had to go all the way.
So if clowns abused children at the rate that pastors do, there would be national, like congressional hearings on circuses.
Right.
There would be 60 Minutes reports every day on that circus that just started in your town and is telling you to come. They have kids hour on Sundays when they would normally be in Sunday school. It would be a national emergency, and we would pass laws, and there would be investigations everywhere. The fact that there is not, again, speaks to the cover that religion gives to the bad elements in our society. It's another reason that religion ruins everything, and it's another reason you don't want this to be a religious country.
Yeah, it's kind of and I think it makes me sad, and just to wrap up, that this, I think for a lot of people, government is this this very, it's kind of, I'm trying to put this way, I'm trying to put this, government is this unknowable thing. It it's too much, it's too big. I can't understand. They didn't take a basics U.S. government class,
right?
And government is complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. There's and I get it, but but you can be informed about the things that you care about. You don't have to be informed on like, what is the regulations for meat. But
yes,
you
if
can
you
vote for
go,
things like food inspections.
the government is not the government. Anybody that
Yeah.
in this sort of derisive
people.
tone says the government, they don't want you to think about what government really is, right? Government starts with, we're in a small little village, right? It's just us, right?
Right.
And it starts with Helen putting her outhouse at the top of the hill, and the runoff comes down into my yard. And I go to the town elders and I say, what the hell? Helen's shit is ending up in my yard. And we all get together and we say, yeah, we should probably keep the outhouses at the bottom of hills, not the tops of hills. So do we all agree that that's what we're going to do? Yep. And then we do that about 1 million times because we learn through, regulations are written in blood, right? Well, this Helen just lost her arm because of this thing. Maybe we should have some sort of occupational safety and health administration, right? OSHA. We do that 1 million times and it's perceived as the government. But really, if you interact with anybody, it's Bob at the Department of Health and Human Services, sub-department waste runoff, sub-department, rural hills. It's Bob.
Right.
And Bob knows what the science is. And Bob helped write the regulations. And Congress passed the regulations, or the FDA proposed the regulations, took notice and comment, and then promulgated the regulations, right? It's Bob. It's not the government. So stop thinking of it as the government and start thinking of it as rules. And if you want to cut regulations and you want to cut the rules, start by telling us which one specifically. Because when you get somebody like Trump who just says, I'm going to cut everything with a chainsaw, then you get what you deserve.
You get chaos.
You get what you deserve, because Bob knows that it's stupid to put the fucking outhouse at the top of the hill, but now because Trump cut those regulations, everybody's going to build their outhouse at the top of the hill because it's a great view when you're taking a shit.
Well, it's one of those things, like I say, like, I hope you get exactly what you voted for.
Right. Exactly.
I'm like, so this is what you voted for. I hope you get it. So, this is the reality of the things. I'm like, okay. But also what you voted for is affecting me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I would encourage all of your listeners to support anybody who's going to run against Trump, support people who are going to support organizations like Recovering from Religion, but also support people who fight
Freedom
for
from Religion Foundation and a bunch of other
ACLU,
organizations.
Freedom from Religion, Americans for the Separation of Church and State,
American Atheists, because they're the ones that are doing all the law reading and introducing legislation and fighting against legislation. So.
Yes, they are going to. There's a reason they started in Texas and Louisiana, because that goes up through Judge Kaczmarek in Amarillo. And Judge Kaczmarek is a one-judge district, so he's going to probably approve a lot of this shit. He's the one who banned the one of the mifepristone, right? They went to Texas because Judge Kaczmarek, who is in Amarillo, is a one-judge guy, so they knew they'd get him, and he is a fucking Christian nationalist. So they have their judges. They're going to get these things through to at least the appellate level, if not the Supreme Court level. So people are going to need money to fund those lawsuits. That's what you can do. And also act locally. Keep an eye on your local school board. I live in a very liberal town. There were people running for school board who wanted to ban books in my town. So keep an eye on your local people. They want to keep education limited and focused on shit that they know doesn't matter, when instead we should be focusing on critical thinking and empathy. So please do those things, and that's your way of fighting back.
Yeah, I agree. So thank you, Graham,
thank you
for coming on the show. That was a good conversation. A little depressing, but also it's timely.
You gotta call them like you see them,
because people gotta pay fucking attention.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and sing Kumbaya all we want while the world burns, but okay. So bright spots. I didn't get to my bright spots. Bright spots.
Okay, yeah, let's do the bright spots.
There's a midterm coming up.
Let's end on a good note.
There's a midterm coming up. We stopped Trump cold in his tracks by winning the midterm. Another bright spot. people already voted for some version of this big, bold, beautiful bill that is going to kill children. It's going to kill adults. It's going to starve people. Also, that we can give trillionaires more money. So that vote is going to be used against them in this coming election. Support people that are in the tightest races that will make a difference. This vote only passed by a few. This bill only passed by a few votes. Is the majority in the House is razor thin. It may not even pass in the Senate. Support people in the midterms. That is the best thing you can do short term to stop Trump in his tracks, to stop Project 2025, because everything he does, if the Democrats control the House, there will be a committee investigation on every single act. No bills will get through. They will stop what he is doing with these executive orders. And we might even, if we get the Senate, be able to pull the same damn trick they did on Obama when Thomas dies or Alito dies, and there's going to be an appointment due. So midterm is the bright spot. The other bright spot is we've seen this before throughout history. The pendulum swings and then it swings back. It's shitty that we have to live through this. I'm confident that good people there's more good people in the world than bad people. And there's good Christians who hate this as much as we do. Let's team up and fight against it.
Yeah, like guys, like we have to get together, align on the values that we have. We debate philosophy all we want, but align with your fellow religious people that are against, that want the separation of church and state. It doesn't think we should live in a theocracy with a bunch of billionaires in charge of us. Like that's not gonna be fun.
I have many religious friends. One of my most religious friend, who during the first Trump term took me out to lunch, sat me down and said, I know these are my people that put him there. I don't know what to do. Like, he was gobsmacked at how his religion has been co-opted into this fascist movement. So there you have allies everywhere. I think the vast majority of religious people are very good people. I have a lot of good friends in that camp, and we can team up.
Go to protests. Do protest.
Vote, give your money to close political races for the midterms, and fund the lawsuits, and fund independent journalism that you find effective. All of these things are what you need. Sunshine is the best disinfectant.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you, Graham. I'll probably have you on around the midterms.
Absolutely, I would love to. I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a thrill.
This is great.
I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Absolutely. If you need to skedaddle, then I'm just going to show the rest of my show.
Okay. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah. Link to your channel. It's also in the doobly-doo.
Oh, you can just Google The Cross-Examiner Podcast or thecrossexaminer.net.
Okay. It's also in the doobly-doo.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Yeah. So it's also in the description. So go there.
Thanks.
All right. I'll talk to you later, sweetheart. Okay. So what do I have coming up? I will tell you. AT Coffee, he was a former Southern Baptist minister who left the church at 49. So he's going to talk about his deconversion story on this coming Thursday. And then I'm going to have Dr. Ben on Saturday night. And then Miss Non Sequitur is going to be here on next Monday. So she's going to be here. Coleman Watts is also going to be here next Thursday. And then I'm going to have a Pride panel on other awesome people because it's Pride Month. And I want to be with my people. And that's going to be June 22nd, Sunday night. And if you would like to join the Pride panel, you have to be queer, guys. It is Pride. Email me or DM me. You know where I am. Other than that, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, and let the algorithm do its thing. So people are like, well, come to my channel and listen to the conversations that I have. If you'll come up with something non sequitur, we can talk about D&D for an hour and a half. I don't care, but you got some time. When you figure it out, just let me know. I'll put it in, in the description. We'll work it out. Don't worry about it. It sounds like, there's no rules. Whatever you want to talk about. Okay, Jay, fine. You don't have to go out for your kid's birthday. So anyway, everybody have a really good time till Thursday, and I make good choices. Stay skeptical, be kind, and I will see you all here at 7 p.m. on Thursday for AT Coffee, talking about his deconversion story out of the Baptist Church, being a minister. It'll be a really great conversation. And now he's an atheist activist, so good for him. All right, good night, everybody. Be kind. Thank you for being here, and I will see you all on Thursday. Bye.